Chapter 185. A wasp the size of a thumb was circling around one of them. Xiao Xian had heard from some people in the team that there were some people who specialized in finding treasures. They would raise some animals that could find treasures. Those animals were very sensitive to objects with special energy, such as the fire crystal. With the help of these animals, the success rate of the treasure hunters would be greatly increased. Now, the strange-looking bee that was flying around one of them should be the so-called treasure-hunting bee. "What do you want?" Xiao Xian asked. "Don't pretend. I know you have the fire crystal. Or, if you can give us more things, we can let you go otherwise." The man in front of Xiao Xian said fiercely. Sure enough, Xiao Xian thought. So, the man in the cave could also sense the fire crystal? After waiting for a while, they saw that Xiao Xian didn't speak. One of them became impatient and his face darkened. "Don't talk to him anymore. Since he doesn't want to give it to us, we'll kill him and search his body." For them, Xiao Xian was just a newcomer who came with the team for the first time. He was a young man who didn't know anything and didn't have much strength. Every time they made a move, they would make some inquiries. Before this, after the treasure hunting bee found the fire crystal, they pretended to be traders in the market and talked with the traveler team. They knew that this guy named Xiao Xian was alone and didn't belong to any of the tribes in the traveler team. They had never heard of the Yinjiao tribe. It was probably a small tribe in a remote place. They didn't need to care about it. It didn't matter if they killed people from such a small tribe. They had even plotted against people from some tribes in the central region, let alone a young man from an unknown tribe. As long as they were not from the Mang tribe, Eight Limbs tribe, or other powerful tribes, when it was time to attack, they would attack mercilessly. There were no other people walking around. The four of them surrounded Xiao Xian. One of them had a ferocious smile on his face. The muscles on his face and other parts of his body that were not covered by clothes were squirming and bulging strangely. Although they did not inflate like the people of the drumming tribe, they still gave off a very strong feeling. At the same time, some lines appeared on his body. This was a totem warrior with rich experience in robbing. He had a strong murderous aura. Many people who came to the market to trade had been killed by him. His bulging muscles and the obvious totem patterns on his body made him look even more ferocious. He opened his mouth and roared at Xiao Xian. That roar sounded like several wild beasts roaring at the same time. It was an obvious threat. If it was in the past, those people who were stopped by them would have already lost their heads out of fear. Their faces would be filled with fear, and they would even promise to take out even more treasures in exchange for their lives. Of course, in the end, they took the treasures and their lives. Chu Su stood quietly behind a few short trees about 100 meters away, looking at the five people over there. He came here with the cyan bird, but he did not expect to see such a scene. TSK, I kindly reminded him, but he still came out alone. So, this person is stupid. He deserves to lose his life. Chu Su whispered. Beside him, the woman in white stood there, holding a furry spider in her arms. She frowned slightly and looked at the five people over there. She was not interested in the affairs of those small tribes. The reason why she followed Chu Su here was to see if they had anything to do with the people who pulled the spider silk. "They are the thieves?" The woman in white asked. "Yes, it's them, but I didn't know that they would do this kind of thing." "Well, they have the guts to steal from the Mang tribe and Eight Limbs tribe. Naturally, they would steal from others." Chu Su said, "Aren't you going to help?" "Why should I help? When the matter over there is finished, I will deal with them." Whether it was Chu Su or the woman in white, for them, people from small tribes did not need their attention. For example, in Chu Su and the woman's eyes, they were civilized people with more technology and rich culture, who thought they were smarter and more powerful, while those from small tribes were stupid and short-sighted barbarians who knew nothing but killing and robbing. The two sides were not at the same level at all. Usually, they did not even bother to say a word to those people. It was rare that he specially reminded them in the cave, but they did not take it seriously. Chu Su was not in the mood to intervene. Looking at the situation over there, the difference in strength between the two sides was too big. It should be over soon. As for whether the surrounded boy was dead or alive, it had nothing to do with him. He was not from his tribe. He could only say that the boy was unlucky and too stupid. After the matter is over, should I do it, or you do it? Chu Su asked the person next to him. The woman in white touched the spider in her arms and said casually, half each. Okay. While Chu Su and the woman in white were discussing how to torture and interrogate the thief, Xiao Xian was standing calmly on the other side of the field, looking at the one who had already used his totem power. You want the fire crystal? Well, if you have the ability, come and get it, Xiao Xian said. Seeing Xiao Xian's reaction, the four of them were puzzled. But more than that, they felt that this was a reckless brat who didn't know the difference between life and death. He was so slow and stupid. A roar like that of a lion or tiger came out of the totem warrior's mouth. His originally swollen and taut legs wriggled at this moment and became thicker again. Every muscle was full of strength, and it looked as if it could kick an elephant to death. After a loud roar, he rushed towards Xiao Xian. Every step he took covered several meters. Almost in the blink of an eye, he was in front of Xiao Xian. At this moment, the totem power in Xiao Xian's body rose to the extreme in an instant. On the totem in his mind, the flames suddenly surged fiercely, like adding fuel to firewood. His exposed arm was not as swollen as the opponent's, but the blue veins under his skin intertwined and jumped like dragons. Xiao Xian looked straight at the man who was rushing towards him. This was the first time he saw him, but he had a strong, killing intent. The fighting intent in his eyes also spread. If everyone has forgotten the Yinjiao tribe, then let them remember it again, Xiao Xian agreed with the shaman's words. Since they did not remember and did not know each other, then it was better to remind them forcefully. They didn't see any big movements from Xiao Xian, who was standing there. He just turned his body slightly, then stretched out his hand and waved his fist in a very simple way. The man who rushed towards Xiao Xian missed. Before he could make another attack, he felt an extremely strong aura explode beside him. This aura was too strong and too fast. It almost reached its peak in a short time, causing his scalp to tingle and his body to slow down. In the next moment, he was punched in the chest. His muscles, which looked very strong and tough, were like fragile fruit skin under the attack of this seemingly ordinary fist. They caved in directly. Visible ripples spread from the point of impact. The sound of bones breaking rang out from the caved-in chest. The expression of the man who originally had a murderous look was now frozen. With this heavy punch, his body seemed to curl up slightly, as if he had been frightened. His back, which corresponded to his chest, bulged, making him look like a hunchback. A large amount of blood spurted from his mouth. His whole body flew out directly, then fell heavily on the ground 20 meters away and stopped moving. A gust of wind blew by. The fallen leaves in the forest not far away were blown over by the wind. The sound of the leaves rubbing against the ground could be heard clearly at this moment. The surrounding atmosphere seemed to have frozen. For a moment, no one said a word. Chu Su and the woman in white, who were standing behind the bush, looked over with wide eyes. Their eyelids twitched, as if they could not believe what they were seeing. Just a moment ago, Chu Su was still discussing with the people beside him how to torture and interrogate the thief later. He did not care about the situation over there at all. Moreover, they had already sentenced Xiao Xian to death and expected the whole process to be completed in a very short time. Now, it was over there very quickly. However, the killer and the victim were directly reversed. How could the people who could steal, rob, and kill in this place be easy to deal with? However, that ferocious-looking strong man was killed by that harmless-looking boy with one punch. Chu Su himself was not sure if he could do that. Not only Chu Su, but even the woman in white, who had always been dismissive of those unknown small tribes, was also stunned at this moment. She did not even know that she was plucking the white hair of her beloved pet white-haired spider. Her eyes were fixed on that figure over there. Chu Su, are you sure that he is just a person from a small tribe? The woman in white asked. Which person from a small tribe could have such power at such a young age? Moreover, the other party's control of the totemic power was extremely precise. In a very short period of time, it had soared from nothing to the peak. Although they were still some distance away, she could clearly feel the huge change in that instant. It was as if a ferocious beast had suddenly appeared there and disappeared in the next moment. There was no buffer time. Everything was completed in that short moment. If the other party was really from a small tribe, then that young man should be called a monster in their tribe. Not hearing Chusu's answer, the woman in white asked again, "That person, which tribe is he from?" Chusu swallowed his saliva. "I don't know." He just ran to the cave where the travelers rested to avoid trouble. People with a bit of eyesight would not provoke him. During the time when he was sleeping, the people in the cave had changed two groups. He really did not know which group was from which tribe, and he did not want to know at that time. Usually, he ignored the travelers and the people from small tribes. Who knew that he would see such a thing today? The woman in white looked at Chu-Su expressionlessly. "Idiot." Chapter 186. While Chu-Su and the woman in white were guessing which tribe Xiaoxian came from, the other three people, who had been completely stunned by the turn of events, finally came to their senses. They had just witnessed with their own eyes how their companion had been killed by this seemingly harmless kid in front of them with one punch. One punch, without using a knife, without using any other tools or tricks. It was just a simple punch. This kid, who they had regarded as prey, had used only one punch to kill the person who had always been at the front of their group. Their plan had gone awry. They had completely misjudged this person who looked too young. None of them had expected that this kid, who was too young, would be so violent, straightforward, and terrifying. It was as if he was demonstrating his strength to someone. At this moment, in the eyes of these three people, Xiaoxian was no longer a naive young man who had just joined the team for the first time, but a predator who was like a ferocious beast. They were bold, but not fearless of death. The three people who had finally reacted roared like monsters, and the totem patterns on their bodies were also revealed. Almost at the same time, the three figures were like high-speed beasts, running in three different directions at the same time, intending to leave this place as quickly as possible. It's too late to run now. The totem power in Xiaoxian's body rose to the peak again, and the fighting spirit in his eyes rose again, even stronger than before. He fixed his gaze on one of them and chased after him, not looking at the other two. The slightly loose animal skin coat produced a rustling sound as Xiaoxian's body moved quickly with the speed of his body. The explosive power from the instant increase also increased his speed to a level faster than the other three. Like a strong gust of wind, he caught up with the person he had targeted. Without waiting for the other person to react, Xiaoxian stretched out his hands, and his arm, which was not as thick as the other person's, was already in front of the other person. The fist that he had just used to hit the other person was swung out again. The other person wanted to block with his arm, but found that the moment his arm came into contact with the other person's fist, it bent and slammed into his chest. Bang! The second person, like the previous one, was almost killed with one blow. It was the same kind of violent method. After killing two enemies in a row, Xiaoxian did not stop. When he chased after the third person, he kicked a small stone out of the ground. The stone that was kicked away shot towards the third person like a bullet. Poochie! His thigh was hit by the stone, but it didn't penetrate, which showed how strong his body was. That person only paused for a moment, ignoring the pain in his leg, and continued to flee. He regretted choosing such a prey. In the end, the prey became the hunter, and the four of them stepped into the hunter's trap. He now understood that the other party had seen through his intentions from the start. Perhaps the other party had already sensed their presence before he had pretended to be a traitor with the jade stones. He was just pretending not to know. Otherwise, why would he let the other members of the traveling party leave first instead of waiting nearby? That's right, because he was confident that he could take care of the four of them. That kid chose such a secluded place. The four of them pitifully thought that the other party was an idiot. He knew that Xiaoxian was fast, but he still underestimated Xiaoxian. Just as that person was about to run out of the forest, a leg that was not as thick as his swept towards him, bringing with it a whooshing sound, like those ferocious beasts pouncing on their prey in the forest. Bang! The person who was swept by that leg flew back over 10 meters and fell to the ground. Don't kill me. I have a lot of treasures, jade stones from the Mang tribe, and silk-clothed from the Eight Limbs tribe. I just hope that you can spare my life. I can take you to find hidden jade stones. There are a lot, really a lot. The person who brought Xiao Xian here was now lying on the ground. Because of the blood he spat out, his mouth was still red, and it was difficult for him to speak. He struggled for a while, but as if he had lost all his strength, he fell back again. He looked in the direction that his last companion had fled. That person seemed to have escaped successfully. Xiao Xian glanced at him, then turned and walked in the direction that the fourth person had fled. Just as Xiao Xian turned around, the person who was lying on the ground quietly got up, took out a slender bone knife from his waist, and stabbed toward Xiao Xian. However, Xiao Xian dodged it as if he had eyes on the back of his head. That person only felt his arms go numb, and the bone knife in his hand fell away. Puff! The slender bone knife pierced through his body. That person made a meaningless sound from his throat, looked at Xiao Xian in disbelief, and then knelt on the ground. Xiao Xian looked at the person in front of him, lifted his foot, and stomped down. Bang! The ground under Xiao Xian's feet, with his feet as the center, suddenly caved in, forming a circle with a diameter of nearly 2 meters and a depth of a palm. Chu Su and the woman in white, who were standing behind the bushes, felt as if their hearts had been violently shaken, just like the ground. The white-haired spider nestled in the woman in white's arms had all its hair standing on end, and it was trembling. The little green bird that had brought Chu Su here also stood on the leaf closest to Chu Su, nervously looking in a direction in the air. On the other side, after Xiao Xian stomped his foot, he no longer paid attention to the person kneeling on the ground. He turned and walked in the direction of the fourth person. His footsteps were slow, as if he was not in a hurry to catch up. Behind Xiao Xian, the person kneeling on the ground had bloody lines spreading, and it looked as if his body had been split open. Such a violent and forceful method made Chu Su feel that he had been blind before. How could he have thought that this young man was an idiot who did not know anything? In fact, he was the idiot, right? He did not even recognize such a powerful person. However, there were 4 people who had surrounded him before. Now that the boy had killed 3 of them, it was obvious that he could not catch up with the 4th one, so he was walking so slowly. Just as he thought about it, Chu Su saw the little green bird hiding in his arms. What's wrong? Chu Su was puzzled. The little green bird hiding in his arms looked up at a certain place in the sky, as if it was very afraid. The sky? Chu Su raised his head and looked over. Then he saw a huge eagle carrying a person and flying towards the young man. Bang! The man held by the eagle was thrown to the ground. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive, but his bones seemed to be a little twisted. He should be dead, right? The 4 people were all killed in such a short time. In this place, strength spoke louder than words. However, not everyone would reveal their strength to the outside world. Who on earth was that boy? Which tribe did he come from? Chu Su and the woman in white both thought that they should go back and ask people to investigate carefully. Chapter 187. Not much time had passed since the man who pretended to be a traitor brought Xiao Xian over to kill all 4 of them. Xiao Xian tied up the 4 dead men with straw ropes. There was no one else around for the time being, but there was no guarantee that someone would come over after hearing the commotion. These 4 men probably had accomplices, so Xiao Xian didn't plan to stay here for long. While Xiao Xian was tying up the men, Cha-Cha was looking left and right with nothing to do. It glanced at the bushes a few times, and then looked at an injured, strange-looking bee that was spinning on the ground. It was the treasure-hunting bee that had been tamed by those people. However, when its master was killed by Xiao Xian, it was also affected. It was injured by the turbulent airflow and fell to the ground, unable to fly. No matter how hard it flapped its wings, it could only make a buzzing sound as it spun on the ground. Cha-Cha stared at the treasure-hunting bee for a few seconds, then pecked and ate it. All right, let's go, Cha-Cha. Let's find a place to get rid of these people first, Xiao Xian said as he jumped onto Cha-Cha's back. Cha-Cha flapped its wings and lifted up the 4 tied-up men with its big claws. Although they were a little heavy, as long as it wasn't a long-distance flight, it wasn't a big problem for Cha-Cha. Before leaving, Xiao Xian glanced at the bushes before retracting his gaze. He knew there were people behind him. The young man he saw in the cave was also there. Because of this, when he dealt with the four men just now, he used such barbaric and violent methods. He used the same style that Mai and the others used to hunt fearsome beasts. For example, Mai used his fists to beat up the four-fanged wild boar. Most Yin-Jiao tribes had the same style and advocated strength. Since it was to intimidate, Xiao Xian naturally used the most Yin-Jiao style. In order to achieve the best effect, he didn't even use a stone knife, only his fists. This should be able to leave an impression on the people there, right? After Xiao Xian and Cha-Cha left, Chu Su and the other two came out from behind the bush and walked to the place where the battle had taken place to take a closer look. Very strong power. It could even be considered barbaric and overbearing, but this was not the style of the few tribes that Chu Su knew. There were also some who were used to using absolute power to attack their opponents, but they might not be able to do so. Moreover, the opponent was so young. On the other side, Xiao Xian and Cha-Cha brought the corpses of the four robbers to a forest that did not belong to the Mang tribe or the Eight Limbs tribe. They threw the four people there. There were many traces of wild beasts around. They believed that these four people would disappear soon. Xiao Xian found all of their belongings. Among them, there were some jade stones and a few good animal skins. After cleaning up the bloodstains on his body and putting the jade stones and animal skins into the animal skin bag, Xiao Xian adjusted himself, dispelling the murderous aura and calming down his negative emotions. It was like every time he returned to the tribe after a hunt to wash his sword. After a short while, when Xiao Xian opened his eyes again, he was no different from his usual self. He still looked like a young and inexperienced boy, and no one could tell that he had killed four people not long ago. Patting Cha-Cha's head, Xiao Xian said, "Let's go back." The people of the Pu and Pu tribe walked around the market. The things they wanted to trade were also exchanged. When they were almost done, they saw Xiao Xian running toward them. They looked at Xiao Xian from head to toe and didn't see any injuries on him. Only then did they feel relieved. "How is it?" Xiao Xian took out a jade stone the size of an egg and tossed it up and down. "Done. Hey, let me see. How much better is the jade stone of the Mang forest compared to the water moon stone of the drumming tribe?" "You asked." Xiao Xian handed over the jade stone. This was only one of the jade stones he found from the four people. It contained less energy, but it was very peaceful. When the time came, Xiao Xian and the others returned to the cave, and another group of people went out. However, the people who went out were not familiar with Xiao Xian. Therefore, when Chu Su asked people to inquire about Xiao Xian, they did not get any useful information. 2 days later, the group of travelers began to prepare to leave. This was the last day that they could hang around the market. If they wanted to trade, they had to hurry up. After this market, they would probably have to wait until next year before they could come again. Xiao Xian came to an old wine cellar. He exchanged for a bamboo bottle of wine and tasted it. The alcohol content of the wine was not high. It was very light and had a refreshing taste with medicinal properties. Because it was stored in a bamboo bottle, it emitted a bamboo fragrance. However, it still couldn't compare to the juice of the plants on the other side of the river. When Xiao Xian drank, he also talked with the old man. In his previous life, he used the grapes in his yard to make wine. The old man was from the Mang tribe. He also had a piece of jade on him, but the texture and pattern of the jade was not as exquisite as Chu Su's. It was also not as big as Chu Su's jade. He didn't have a high status in the Mang tribe, but in the market, some people who liked to blackmail and rob didn't dare to have any ideas about him. The old man was a little arrogant, but when he talked with Xiao Xian about making wine, he became very enthusiastic. This was a person who was very enthusiastic about making wine. When talking about his favorite things, he didn't have the same attitude as before. He asked Xiao Xian to sit there and took out several kinds of grain wine for Xiao Xian to drink. When Xiao Xian talked with the old man, he also figured out the function of the pottery tools. If the soil in the Yinjiao tribe wasn't suitable for pottery, they wouldn't have used stone for everything. While they were talking, a person came to the old man's booth. "Hey you." The old man was annoyed when he was interrupted while talking with Xiao Xian. He was about to scold the person, but when he looked up, he saw a piece of jade hanging on the person in front of the booth. He swallowed his scolding and put on a smile. However, the person in front of the booth didn't pay attention to the old man. He said to Xiao Xian, "Hey, come here. I have something to tell you." Xiao Xian ignored him and continued to drink the wine in the bamboo tube. Seeing Xiao Xian's attitude, Chu Su wanted to scold him, but after thinking for a while, he walked over. When he saw the old man next to him, he waved his hand. The old man smiled and stepped back a few steps to stay away from them. After the old man left, Chu Su lowered his voice and said to Xiao Xian, "Are you interested in seeing what happened to the people who robbed you that day?" Xiao Xian thought for a while and stood up from the ground. Where? Xiao Xian wasn't interested in those robbers. What he wanted to see was how the people of the Mang tribe dealt with those people. How strong were the people of the Mang tribe? After talking to you and the others, Xiao Xian left with Chu Su and went to a mountain a little further away from the market. That place didn't belong to the Mang tribe or the Eight Limbs tribe. In front of a wooden house on the mountain, a dozen people were gathered. The leader was a tall and strong man with a face full of curly hair. He took a few gulps of water from a clay pot, then swung his hand and smashed the pot on the ground. Bang! The clay pot was smashed into pieces in an instant. "Haven't you found them yet?" the curly bearded man asked. His eyes were as sharp as knives as he glanced at the people around him. The person closest to the curly bearded man trembled and said carefully, "Not yet. Even the treasure hunting bee didn't come back." The curly bearded man's tone was very dangerous. He seemed to be suppressing his anger. The treasure hunting bee that he had trained with great difficulty was taken away by those four good-for-nothings. They said they found the fire crystals, but what happened? They didn't find any fire crystals. The four of them disappeared together with the treasure hunting bee. They were probably all killed by the killers. When he sent people to look for them, they only found blood in one place. If those four people didn't come back, they probably wouldn't be able to. Big brother, could it be that the people of the Mang tribe or the Eight Limbs tribe found something? A person said with fear. Could it be that they know he stole it? Another person said worriedly. In that case, we have to move. Someone suggested. If we wait for them to find us, we won't have much chance to escape. Listening to his subordinate's words, the curly bearded man became angrier and angrier. His eyes turned red, and he punched the stone table in front of him. The air rippled, and the stone table was broken into small pieces in the blink of an eye. Stone powder flew everywhere. Behave yourselves today. Don't be targeted. After a pause, the curly-bearded man took a deep breath. Pack your things. We'll leave tomorrow. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a whooshing sound coming from all directions. Thin and hard bamboo thorns shot at the people gathered there like rain. Those who reacted fast had already started to resist with the tools in their hands. Those who reacted slowly were directly shot into hedgehogs. However, even if they were shot like this, they didn't die. They still had consciousness, but they couldn't move. If they moved their muscles slightly, they would feel pain all over their body. And every time they moved, their blood would flow out along those bamboo thorns. Such thin and hard bamboo thorns could only be made by those special bamboos in the Mang forest. People of the Mang tribe. At this moment, without the curly bearded man's words, the people around scattered and rushed in all directions, hoping that the encirclement there would be weaker and give them a chance to escape. However, before they could run far, they were all tied up by the thin threads. Before they could struggle, they were knocked out or killed directly. Those who wanted to rush out of the encirclement with speed were cut into pieces by the thin threads when they passed between two big trees. Xiao Xian could still hear the sound of the strings breaking. The threads cut through the people, but they also broke because of the fast and strong impact. Not only the Mang tribe, even the people of the Eight Limbs tribe came. A sense of despair rose in the hearts of everyone who was surrounded. But they didn't understand why the Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe would unite to treat them so seriously. They had only stolen a few pieces of jade that were not of good quality, and they had only taken 2 strands of spider silk. Could it be that because of this, they had incurred the wrath of these 2 large tribes? When the curly-bearded man was escaping, he was also tied up by some thin threads. He roared, and the muscles covered by the black totem patterns on his body suddenly jumped, as if they were ready to attack. Another roar, like a volcano that had been accumulating power for a long time, suddenly erupted. The dense sound of the strings breaking sounded, and he actually broke free from these thin threads. Although there were some cuts on his body, it didn't affect him much. However, just when he broke free from the threads, he heard the slight sound of the wind being cut diagonally behind him. The curly, bearded man instinctively felt the danger, especially at his neck. He suddenly felt a chill. This sudden change shocked him. Obviously, the people who found them this time were not simple people from the Mang tribe. They wanted to completely encircle and annihilate them, and even kill them. They didn't mean to show mercy at all. A sharp bamboo knife that was 2 fingers wide and half an arm long appeared at the side of the curly, bearded man's neck. The bamboo knife appeared very fast, and the distance between the knife and the neck was also very short, as if it could cut this person's neck in the next moment, but it also gave people an illusion that there was plenty of time to escape. However, an illusion was an illusion after all. Puff! Blood splashed out. The curly, bearded man still maintained the expression of disbelief, like a rusty machine, and looked to the side sluggishly. There stood a person. The curly, bearded man opened his eyes wide and carefully looked at the piece of jade hanging from the person's waist. That was a piece of jade with a slight green color. Why would such a person deal with his own group in person? Although this group of people had killed many people and cheated a few people from the Mang tribe and the 8 Limbs tribe, for the sake of caution, after coming here, they absolutely didn't kill the people from these 2 tribes. However, today, the Mang tribe sent such a person to encircle and annihilate them in person. Generally speaking, such people shouldn't have put them in their eyes. With their arrogance, why would they need to do this? Until death, the curly, bearded man still couldn't figure out why he provoked the person wearing the jade. Bang! The curly, bearded man fell to the ground. The person wearing the jade shook off the few bloodstains on the bamboo knife and didn't care about the remaining bloodstains on the bamboo knife and looked around. Those who were encircled were either dead or dizzy. Not only the dead, curly-bearded man, but also Xiao Xian, who stood not far away and looked over there, didn't understand. The strength gap was too big. If they were in the Yinjiao tribe, only people like Tuo and Kiki could solve it. Uncle Huang Yi, how is it? Chu Su asked. The person holding the bamboo knife and wearing the jade shook his head. It's not them. It's not them? Chu Su was confused. If it's not them, who else can it be? They're the only ones who have entered the forest. Several of my bamboo rats have been eaten by them. They don't have that ability yet. Huang Yi said. Because he was sure that it wasn't them, he didn't show any mercy and directly killed the people here instead of taking them back for interrogation. Then who else could it be? Chu Su thought, glancing at Xiao Xian next to him, and denied it in his heart. No, it's not this guy. Although this guy is strong, he can't sneak into the depths of the forest quietly to steal a few good pieces of jade. This matter had infuriated the leader so much that he had flipped out. Could it be? Chu Su suddenly thought a name. Huang Yi sighed in a low voice. It may be a thief. Chu Su was a little frustrated. If it was a thief, it would not be so easy to catch him. Pack up and go back. Huang Yi called the others. Chapter 188. After saying a few words to the leader of the 8 Limbs tribe, Huang Yi turned his head and intended to say something to Chu Su. However, his sight fell on Xiao Xian, who was standing beside Chu Su, especially on Xiao Xian's animal skin clothes. His sight stayed on Xiao Xian for 2 more seconds, and he frowned discontentedly, thinking, how could Chu Su know people from such a small tribe? Thinking of this, Huang Yi glanced at Xiao Xian again. Except for his clothes, which were very small tribe style, he didn't see anything special about Xiao Xian. Seeing that Xiao Xian was still staring at the clothes of the totem warriors of the Mang tribe and the 8 Limbs tribe, Huang Yi was more sure that this was an ignorant person. Without giving Xiao Xian more sight, Huang Yi looked around and found nothing useful, so he left with his people. And the people of the 8 Limbs tribe didn't give Xiao Xian more than a glance, and they packed up and planned to leave. Little Sue, let's go. The people of the 8 Limbs tribe said to the woman in white who was holding the white-haired spider. You go first. I have something else to do. Okay, then we'll go back first. After the people of the Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe left, there were only 3 people left: Xiao Xian, Chu Su, and Su of the Eight Limbs tribe. Chu Su winked at Su, asking her to test Xiao Xian. Unfortunately, Su didn't move. She just stood there holding the spider with long white hair, quietly observing Xiao Xian's behavior. Seeing that Su didn't cooperate, Chu Su glared at her. Today, he took Xiao Xian here to let Xiao Xian see the powerful strength of the Mang tribe. Especially today, the leader of the Mang tribe was a senior totem warrior. It was rare for a senior totem warrior of the Mang tribe to lead a team to encircle and suppress. For people of small tribes, they would be shocked once they saw it. But obviously, this guy didn't seem to have much reaction. Except for glancing at the clothes of the warriors of the 2 tribes, he didn't show any other expression. Was he shocked or not? Chu Su was not sure. Just as Chu Su was about to find a topic to test Xiao Xian, he saw Xiao Xian walk away. "Sai, we can't go there. There's a trap set by 8 of limbs." Before Chu Su could finish his words, he saw that Xiao Xian had already walked into the area. He thought to himself, "You won't listen to my advice again. You'll suffer later." However, after waiting for a while, there was still no movement from the other side. Chu Su was confused. He looked at Su, who was standing next to him, and nodded in the direction of Xiao Xian with his chin. He asked, "Didn't you set any traps over there?" Su was also puzzled. She remembered that some of the traps set by the people of the tribe were activated when they encircled and annihilated those people, but there were still some that were not removed. They were all traps that were not lethal, but could trap people. This was the style of the Eight Limbs tribe. The purpose was to warn some people who came here and let them remember the Eight Limbs tribe deeply and be deeply afraid of them. However, that guy had walked so far, but not a single trap was activated. Su, who was getting more and more confused, didn't notice that she had already plucked a handful of hair from a spider in her arms. Seeing Su like that, Chu Su didn't expect her to give a proper answer. He saw Xiao Xian strolling in the woods, and guessed that when the people of the Eight Limbs tribe evacuated just now, they probably removed all the traps. Seeing Chu Su walk over there, Su opened her mouth, but said nothing in the end. "Sai, you're Xiao Xian, right? Which tribe are you from?" "Ah." Chu Su walked over. Before he took 2 steps into the woods, one of his feet was tied and hung upside down on a tree, swaying. Chu Su took out his knife and cut off the thin wire that tied his feet. He landed on the ground, shook off the leaves on his body, and turned back to glare at Su, who was standing there silently. After a while, he looked at Xiao Xian, who was standing in the woods. The traps were not removed. How could that guy be safe and sound? Luck? No, he couldn't be so lucky. According to the style of the Eight Limbs tribe, since they didn't remove all the traps, there must be a lot of hidden wires and snares waiting for the prey to come to their door. Even if there were only some small things left for the people of the Eight Limbs tribe, many people would still be trapped by those traps, just like Chu Su's own carelessness and got one of his feet tied just now. Chu Su didn't look down on Xiao Xian now. Who on earth was this guy? Who could kill 4 totem warriors so quickly and stroll in the traps of the Eight Limbs tribe? He had never seen the totem patterns on Xiao Xian's body when he was fighting. This time, Chu Su didn't continue to walk inside. He just waited at the edge of the woods, watching Xiao Xian stroll in there. Xiao Xian was very interested in the traps of the Eight Limbs tribe. Although there were only some ordinary traps left, and the more technical ones were removed, Xiao Xian could still see some of the key points and preferences of the people of the Eight Limbs tribe from those simple traps. Moreover, the wires used by the people of the Eight Limbs tribe should be spider silk, right? There were many kinds of spider silk. Although many of the traps had been removed, there were still many subtle traces left on the branches and leaves, which could be seen from those traces. When Xiao Xian walked out of the woods again, Chu Su showed a smile that he thought was friendly. He pointed at himself and said to Xiao Xian, "Mang Forest, Chu Su." The people of the Mang tribe liked to call themselves Mang Forest XX. The Mang Forest referred to the wide woods of the Mang tribe. It was said that there were countless treasures in the Mang Forest, and the people who were born in the Mang Forest were also gifted. Their totem warriors of the same level were much stronger than those of other tribes. Of course, this was just what Xiao Xian heard from the travelers of the Pu tribe. These rumors might have embellished the facts, so it shouldn't be so exaggerated. The warriors of the Yinjiao tribe were also stronger than some of the people of the Pu tribe and the drumming tribe. This was what Xiao Xian personally experienced. Anyway, since the people of the Mang tribe introduced him so formally, Xiao Xian naturally replied formally. Putting several leaves picked from a woods into the animal skin bag, Xiao Xian looked at Chu Su and answered, Yinjiao Xiao Xian. Yinjiao? Why does it sound so familiar? Chu Su recalled. Not only Chu Su, but Su, who was standing next to him with the white spider in her arms, also felt familiar. Xiao Xian looked up at the sky and said, It's getting dark. I'll go back first. Oh, okay. Chu Su, who was wondering why the word Yinjiao sounded so familiar, didn't say much. After Xiao Xian left, he still stood there thinking. Hey, Su, have you heard of the Yinjiao tribe before? Chu Su asked. I think I have, but it's been too long. I can't remember. Su touched the spider in her hand, thinking about when she had heard of this tribe. The two were silent, trying hard to recall when they had heard of this tribe. Ah, I remember. Chu Su jumped up in surprise, and then said to himself, How could it be? How could it be? What do you remember? Su asked. That tribe with strong limbs, but no intelligence. Violent, barbaric, and unreasonable. Didn't you hear the story of Yinjiao when you were a child? Hearing Chu Su's words, Su was shocked. Didn't they say that the Yinjiao tribe was destroyed? Whether it was the Mang tribe or the Eight Limbs tribe, many children in the tribes were taught when they were very young. Those teachers would tell them some stories, some of which were true, some of which were embellished and blurred, and the story of the Yinjiao tribe was one of them. It was said that the Yinjiao tribe was one of the famous tribes in the central region at that time, which was at the same level as the Mang tribe, the Eight Limbs tribe, and the Thousand Masts tribe. However, the tribe was very barbaric. The shamans in the tribe didn't know anything, and the leader was headstrong. The people in the tribe were all ignorant, arrogant, and willful, except for their great strength. Finally, one day, the natural disaster came, and the shamans and the leader in the tribe listened to slanderous words. As a result, the tribe was divided and went on different paths. Later, the tribe was destroyed. Since then, there was one less strong person in the central region. Chu Su and Su were not the only two people who were indoctrinated in this way. Before this, they also thought so. But now, what was the matter with the person who called himself Xiao Xian of the Flaming Horns? When that guy killed people, the totem patterns were very clear, and it didn't look like the destruction of the tribe at all. And his strength was at least at the level of intermediate totem warrior, not inferior to Chu Su, who had just entered the intermediate level. That barbaric and tough style was indeed what they had heard, but ignorant? Not necessarily. That brat had tricked all four of his robbers. The story, which was used as a negative example by the two tribes, seemed to be not what they thought. However, when they were young, when the teachers told the story of Yinjiao, they also sighed with emotion that if the Yinjiao tribe was still there, the situation in the central region would not be like it was now. Thinking of this, Chu Su didn't say more to Su. He had to go back quickly and tell everyone about it. By the way, he asked what the real Yinjiao tribe was like. Not to mention how smart they were, their strength was there, which could not be ignored. If Yinjiao was really still there, if Yinjiao came back, what should they do? After Chu Su left in a hurry, Su also hurried back to the tribe to tell others. Several senior leaders of the Mang tribe were still worried about whether there were robbers in the forest. When they were discussing, Chu Su ran over and told them about Xiao Xian. Just now, they were dissatisfied with Chu Su's recklessness and wanted to scold him, but now their attention was diverted. Xiao Xian of Yinjiao, is it really that tribe? It's impossible. Didn't they say that the Yinjiao tribe was extinct? People suddenly started to talk about it. Although they were talking about it, they didn't have a definite impression and position. They didn't know what kind of tribe the Yinjiao tribe was, so they were just surprised. The chief on the seat called Chu Su over and asked him in detail. Then, he asked everyone to leave first. He and the shaman went to a solemn stone house, where some things left behind by the ancestors of the Mang tribe were stored. When they came to the place where the scrolls were stored, They opened the lid of a big bamboo box. Inside, there were some scrolls made of special bamboo. At the bottom of the bamboo box, there were scrolls that had not been opened for hundreds of years. The shaman of the Mang tribe took out one of the scrolls in the corner of the bottom floor. Because it had been there for a long time, even the special bamboo and animal skin would inevitably change color, showing a sense of age. When he opened the scroll, what came into view was a picture of two horns wrapped in flames. The Yinjiao tribe. The next day, when a Mang tribe sent people to the cave to look for them, they found that the traveling team had left early in the morning. Chapter 189. The traveling team continued on their planned route. After leaving the area of the Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe, the traveling tribe traveled for another 6 days. They passed through some small markets or some medium-sized tribes in the central region and exchanged some things. Xiao Xian marked all the places they passed through on the map he drew and even marked the characteristics of each tribe. Because they were in a hurry, they didn't exchange too many things. Xiao Xian only exchanged for some tribal symbols or small souvenirs and hurried on with their journey. Of course, the traveling team also encountered some wild beasts and even ferocious beasts when they passed through some wild mountains and ridges. However, there were relatively fewer ferocious beasts, and most of them were wild beasts. The traveling team pointed to the map and told Xiao Xian that most of the ferocious beasts were in this direction on the map, and that direction was exactly where Xiao Xian planned to go to the old haunt of the Yinjiao tribe. It was said that there were very few human tribes living there. It was also a vast mountainous area where ferocious beasts often appeared, and there were all kinds of unimaginable dangers. It was a place that no traveling team was willing to go to. Xiao Xian wanted to go there and have a look. Since they were on a trip, they naturally had to go to the old haunt of the Yinjiao tribe to see what secrets were hidden in the old haunt of the Yinjiao ancestors, and what the root oldie talked about was. Since they were not going the same way, Xiao Xian naturally had to separate from the traveling tribe. Are you really going to leave the team? It's very dangerous to be alone. You persuaded Xiao Xian after hearing that he was going to leave. It's rare for me to go out of the tribe, so I want to look around. When I'm done, I'll follow the route to find you. Xiao Xian said. Along the way, Xiao Xian had drawn part of the map of the central region according to what he knew. Although there were still many places that the traveling team hadn't been to, and the animal skin roll was still empty, Xiao Xian was not in a hurry and could finish it slowly. After bidding farewell to the traveling team, Xiao Xian headed in the direction of the old Yinjiao tribe, that old he had mentioned. This time he was alone. Sometimes he would ask Cha-Cha to bring him along when they encountered places with complicated terrain. One day later, Xiao Xian looked at the map in his hand. According to the map, this area was the territory of the Lu tribe. Usually, when approaching the territory of a tribe, Xiao Xian would ask the Cha-Cha to be more careful. These tribes were very guarded. To get to the old haunt, they had to go around the Lu tribe. Cha-Cha, who was still in the air, let out a cry that indicated that there were people nearby. Xiao Xian also heard the commotion. Those people seemed to be deliberately restraining their auras and did not speak loudly. They were all silent. They should be from the Lu tribe, but Xiao Xian didn't know why they were so careful. No matter what, Xiao Xian had to be more vigilant. Rustle. Some sounds of branches and leaves rubbing against each other rang out. There were also the sounds of rapid, approaching footsteps. It didn't seem to be made by humans. Xiao Xian jumped onto a tree, intending to take a look from above. Although the traveling team had told Xiao Xian that the Lu tribe was not a big threat, Xiao Xian still had to be cautious. If the other party's attitude was not good, he would directly ask the Cha-Cha in the air to come to his aid. Ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. The footsteps got closer and faster. Xiao Xian couldn't see the other party's face clearly, but from the movements of the branches, he could tell that it was a tall guy. As the footsteps got closer, Xiao Xian hid behind the dense branches and looked out through the gaps between the leaves. Ta-ta-ta. When the other party passed by the tree Xiao Xian was hiding in like the wind, he paused and then turned back. Xiao Xian held the hilt of his knife, wondering if the other party had discovered him. The surrounding trees were not tall, and the one Xiao Xian chose was more suitable for hiding. As he was thinking, Xiao Xian saw the branches below being pulled apart. He lowered his head and saw a big bird's head. The bird was holding a fruit in its beak. The fruit was from this tree. Obviously, this bird only found the fruit, not Xiao Xian. But it didn't expect that when it pulled the branch, it would see the person hiding inside. Just like that, a man and a bird met. Xiao Xian was hiding at least 5 meters above the ground, but this bird's head was less than a meter away from Xiao Xian. This showed how tall this bird was. With Guang's forest raccoons in front of him, Xiao Xian was wary of such a big bird. After the branches below were pulled apart, Xiao Xian held the stone knife and was about to slash at it. However, before Xiao Xian could do anything, the bird let out a shrill squawk. Ignoring the fruit crumbs in its mouth, it turned around and ran away with its big feet. Xiao Xian. What a waste of such a big bird. If it was Guang's forest raccoons that used its head like a hoe, it would probably peck at Xiao Xian, right? However, this bird was even more surprised than Xiao Xian. It was like a little white rabbit meeting a big bad wolf, running away in panic and fear. Xiao Xian pushed aside the branches and looked at the bird that ran away like the wind. It was the same as Guang's forest raccoons. Its upper limbs had degenerated and it could not fly. Moreover, its body looked fatter than Guang's forest raccoons. Its lower limbs were slightly thicker and very fleshy. Whoosh! The shadow in the sky swept down, caught the big bird that had not run far, and then flew up again. After Cha-Cha caught the big bird, a team of 7 people rushed out of the woods. They did not notice Xiao Xian at first. They just stared at the sky and shouted. One of them even threw the spear in his hand, but Cha-Cha flew too fast and curved, so the spear missed a lot. It's caught! Where did this eagle come from? I've never seen this eagle before. Several people shouted over there. Then, they noticed Xiao Xian standing next to them. Who are you? One of them asked suspiciously. I'm just passing by. Well, that's my eagle up there. Xiao Xian saw that although the other party looked unhappy, they did not intend to continue throwing spears. He whistled and made a gesture towards the sky. The travelers had said that the Lu tribe had a special status in the central region, and the people of the Lu tribe should be friendly with each other. Cha-Cha caught the struggling bird and circled in the sky before landing. The other party was worried that Cha-Cha would directly throw the big bird down from the sky. However, Cha-Cha only threw the big bird in front of Xiao Xian when it was close to the ground. Then it quickly flew up. It did not like the people who threw spears at it. The big bird was put on the ground. There were some claw marks on its body, and it was a little frightened, so it did not recover for a while. After panting for a while, it planned to continue escaping. Unfortunately, the other party had already tied it up with straw ropes. Are you really just passing by? The leader asked. This time, his attitude was a little better. Yes, I was just resting here when that big bird ran over, Xiao Xian said. I'm sorry. I thought that eagle was going to take away our bird. The leader laughed. He had an impression of every eagle that came to their tribe to steal food, but the one he saw just now was indeed very unfamiliar. Moreover, domesticated eagles were different from wild eagles. Just now, he saw that eagle had drawings on its claws. He did not see clearly, but he guessed that they were totem patterns. The Lu tribe generally did not want to make enemies with others. Therefore, even if they were not close to many tribes, they would not offend them either. This young man in front of him could raise such a big eagle, so his tribe should be relatively large. Lu tribe, Yinjiao. The man introduced himself. Yinjiao tribe, Xiao Xian. Yinjiao tribe? They looked at each other. It seemed that this was the first time they had heard of it. Was it very far from here? Did you come here with the traveling team? One of them asked. Yes, I just parted with them. Sure enough, he came from a far place. They thought. Looking at the eagle in the sky, Yinjiao said to Xiao Xian, can you do us a favor? Yes, please. Yinjiao explained briefly. It turned out that every once in a while, the Lu tribe would transport some of their animals out to trade with people from other tribes. Then they would come back. However, there was an accident early in the morning. The fence was damaged, but it was not repaired in time. A big bird rushed out, and then many more birds ran away. The patrolman intercepted some, but missed many. They sent out 5 teams to search in 5 directions. Until now, they had not found all the animals. So, I want you to ask your eagle to help us find them. Yin Jiu said. Okay, this was not a difficult task. Xiao Xian called Cha-Cha down and said a few words, then let it fly away. The people who'd been busy all morning finally had a chance to rest. 3 of them directly sat down on the ground, thinking that if the eagle could not find them later, they would have to continue. Hey, it's coming. One of them, who was staring at the sky, said excitedly. They had only seen eagles in the sky take away their livestock before. This was the first time that they had encountered an eagle helping to bring back their livestock. This was only the first one. After about 10 minutes, the second one was found. After the second one, Cha-Cha did not bring back any more big birds. There should be no more birds around here. Let's go back and see if the others have found any. Yanjiu said. At the same time, in order to thank Xiao Xian, Yanjiu also invited Xiao Xian to join them. During the chat just now, Xiao Xian showed his interest in raising big birds. This was also something that the Lu tribe was very proud of. They liked to let people see the results of their breeding, so that they could trade with more people in the future. Come with us. We have the largest breeding farm in the central region. Many tribes have traded with us. Yanjiu brought Xiao Xian into the tribe. When he talked about breeding, his tone was full of pride. Xiao Xian, however, looked at the scene in front of him in surprise. They stood on the hill and looked at the lower ground. There were hundreds of birds as big as the previous one. Although they looked similar in size to the forest raccoons, they were more docile and only ate vegetables. In Xiao Xian's eyes, they were simply lumps of meat. Chapter 190. Around the wide farm, huge tree trunks and stone pillars formed high fences. Around the fences, there were guards at intervals. Probably because of the accident that happened today, the number of guards increased. In some of the fences, the birds were driven away, and some people were repairing them. Those big, fat, and timid birds were stretching their necks and looking around. Occasionally, some people would throw in some fruits and unknown grains, which would cause a commotion in the fences. The big birds would rush to peck at the food on the ground. After eating, they would sleep in the sun. Xiao Xian also saw some people carrying out eggs about half a meter high from some haystacks. In comparison, the eggs that hatched Cha-Cha were so weak. Anyone who saw Cha-Cha now would find it hard to imagine that Cha-Cha came out of such a small egg. The people of the Lu tribe called those big birds meat birds. They were domesticated from moas. After generations of domestication, these meat birds gradually lost their wild nature and became docile and timid. However, they looked fat and had short and thick legs. Xiao Xian didn't expect these birds to run so fast. At least, they ran more gracefully than they looked. In addition to those meat birds, Yanjiu also took Xiao Xian to see other animal pens, such as cows, horses, and sheep. The scale of these pens was not as big as the one in the Feng tribe, but with such rich breeding species and techniques, the people of the Lu tribe would not lack food. How is it? How are the animals in our tribe? Yanjiu asked Xiao Xian with a proud face. Very good. Xiao Xian answered honestly. Xiao Xian had seen many tribes along the way, and they all knew how to breed animals. However, none of them could compare to the Lu tribe. Because of this, the Lu tribe was able to establish a foothold in the central region and maintain a good relationship with many other tribes. It was said that several large tribes in the central region had friendly relations with the Lu tribe. If the Lu tribe was in danger, they would even send people to help. No one knew whether this was true or not. Just like what Xiao Xian knew, this was not an aggressive tribe. They could even be considered as the good guys in the central region. Of course, the good guys were not without temper. To be able to gain a foothold in the central region, their own strength was indispensable. Are those also raised by you for food? Xiao Xian pointed to a breeding area where giant cows were grazing. There weren't many of them, but they were obviously much larger than the surrounding cows, sheep, and horses. They were very conspicuous. No, those are not all for eating and trading. Most of the time, we use them to pull carriages, Yanjiu said. Pull a cart. That's right. Look over there. We are preparing the meat bird this time. If it weren't for the unforeseen event, we would have already set off and be on our way. Speaking of this, Yinjio's smile faded a little. How could such a thing happen in the animal pen? Did no one discover the breach? Even the guards couldn't stop it? Yinjio didn't believe it. He felt that someone must have deliberately destroyed it. However, he wouldn't tell Xiao Xian about this. This was an internal matter that they were investigating. It wasn't something to be proud of. To outsiders, they would only say it was an accident. Xiao Xian saw an ox cart here for the first time. It was a very large ox cart. Even if he didn't see the cart, he could tell the size of the cart just by looking at the deep tracks left on the ground. There were some damaged stone spinning wheels or pottery spinning wheels and other wheel-shaped apparatuses. The stone spinning wheels were specially made, and the stone material was relatively hard. There were more pottery spinning wheels, from some small model-like ones to those half the height of a person. There were all kinds of them, and there were even paintings on them. Some of these wheels were used to twist and spin thread. Some were used as wheels to transport food to the animals. Some are also used as wheels to transport heavier goods. The distance between two roughly parallel tracks was more than 4 meters. If they walked a little further, they could hear people talking. They could see people carrying meat birds. Those meat birds had been tied up and couldn't escape. They were carried onto large wooden carts and piled up into a small hill. Yinjio caught a soldier who was carrying meat birds and asked, "Have you found all the escaped meat birds?" The soldier wiped the sweat on his forehead and sighed. "Those who went out to search have all come back. Up until now, almost all the ones that ran out have been found. Only one escaped." "Only one. That's good enough." Yinjio sighed. He looked around and asked again, "By the way, how's the cargo moving?" "It's almost done. We can leave in the afternoon." "Okay, you continue." Yinjio didn't say much to the others. In order to thank Xiao Xian for his help today, he treated Xiao Xian to a sumptuous lunch at noon. He also gave Xiao Xian a meat bird and a meat bird egg. The meat bird Xiao Xian gave Cha-Cha an extra meal. Giving Xiao Xian something was not just to thank him. Yinjio also had his own thoughts. Although they had never heard of the Yinjiao tribe, this tribe was not necessarily weak. Maybe they would have contacts in the future, so it would be good to make friends with them. Knowing that Xiao Xian had left the tribe for a long journey, Yinjio didn't ask for details. Many people from other tribes would travel around, especially those from other small tribes on the periphery. They would be brought to the central region by their elders to gain experience. However, few people like Xiao Xian would travel alone. Xiao Xian didn't say where he was going. He just pointed to some places near the old haunt of the Yinjiao tribe. "Our transport team will pass by there. You can go with us. It's safer that way. Besides, the Wanshi tribe is there. People in their tribe have bad tempers." Yinjio said, people from a Lu tribe who could be called bad-tempered naturally wouldn't have bad tempers. Inviting people to ride with them was one of the Lu tribe's ways to show their friendliness. Xiao Xian didn't refuse. After thanking them, he helped them carry the tied-up meat birds. Observing these meat birds from a close distance, Xiao Xian found that after they were tied up, they would only cry once or twice. Most of the time, they were sleeping. There was no sense of danger at all. Most of the people of the Lu tribe carried one bird with 2 people, but Xiao Xian could carry 2 birds with no problem. "Xiao Xian, people in your tribe are really strong." Yinjio couldn't help but say, "Yes, people in our tribe don't have good tempers, but they are strong." Xiao Xian threw the 2 meat birds onto the wooden cart and answered. Yinjio didn't take Xiao Xian's words seriously. He only thought that Xiao Xian was joking. After all, he didn't think Xiao Xian was a violent person. Naturally, he also thought that people in the Yinjiao tribe were all like that. However, he believed Xiao Xian's words about people in the Yinjiao tribe being strong. "Your tribe is very similar to the Wanshi tribe. You are both strong, but your tribe is definitely better than the Wanshi tribe," Yinjio said. The Wanshi tribe was said to not have been one of the big tribes in the central region. Later, it developed and became famous. However, some old, strong people didn't seem to care about the Wanshi tribe. When the goods were almost loaded, the leader called everyone to get ready to set off. Yinjio was also one of the members of the transport team. More than 10 bullock carts were lined up in a straight line. The giant cows had already been fed, and were ready to work. "Come on, Xiao Xian, get on my cart." Yin Jiu jumped on one of the carts and shouted to Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian walked over and jumped on the cart that was taller than him. The wheels of this kind of bullock cart were huge stone wheels. They were round and slightly thick. Probably for cushioning, the stone wheels were tied with circles of grass vines. In order to pile more meat birds, there was no carriage or roof on the cart. It was just an open-air wooden cart. Fortunately, the thick planks were strong enough. Otherwise, they would collapse with a little pull. After the leader of the transport team finished cleaning up, he shouted, "Let's go." The sound of the stone wheels rolling on the ground and the creaking of the planks, mixed with the cries of the meat birds, rang out as the carts set off. This was a very novel experience for Xiao Xian. Sitting on the wooden cart, with his knees hanging down, Xiao Xian listened to the gossip of some tribes in the central region. For example, which tribe had a war, which tribe's people were beaten up, which tribe found some treasures, which tribe's chief or shaman changed, and so on. In the afternoon, Yangguang was still very hot. Probably because it was the end of the year, the temperature was not very high. Xiao Xian listened to the people of the Lu tribe all the way. Occasionally, he asked a few questions to learn about the situation nearby and to perfect the map. As they got closer and closer to the old land, Xiao Xian didn't hear anything about the Yinjiao tribe. No one mentioned the Yinjiao tribe. Instead, they talked about the Wanshi tribe, which was said to be very strong and bad-tempered. Next to the old land of the Yinjiao tribe, a new strong tribe, the Wanshi tribe, rose up and occupied a new territory. According to the words of the people of the Lu tribe, in the eyes of the Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe with a long history, the Wanshi tribe was the second Yinjiao tribe. And the Yinjiao tribe, which used to be glorious in the central region, had long been forgotten. While they were talking, Xiao Xian heard a long and sonorous elephant trumpet in front of them. Looking up, at the intersection of the flat ground and the sky, a black shadow was wriggling. Because of the movement there, the place where the sky and the sky met became blurred. The Wanshi tribe. It's the people of the Wanshi tribe. The people in the carts were not in the mood to chat anymore. They looked nervous, and some people had already taken out their weapons. The Lu tribe had a good relationship with many tribes. In the central region, many tribes would not attack this nice guy because he was not a big threat. Even if they wanted to fight for territory, they would not attack the Lu tribe. And the Wanshi tribe was not one of them. Yin Jiu had said that the people of the Wanshi tribe were bad-tempered, and conflicts between the two tribes often happened. "Look at them. Are they going to fight with other tribes again?" A man in the cart said. "They should be. Look at their mammoths, carrying so many things on their backs." Another man said with disgust, "If they're strong enough, why don't they hunt the ferocious beasts in the forest? They always rob other tribes." The Wanshi tribe was close to the forest where there were many ferocious beasts. However, they seldom went there to hunt. Every time they had enough food, they would go to other tribes to rob them. They only robbed those tribes that were weaker than them. As for the powerhouses of the big tribes, they would not provoke them. I heard that there was a big tribe in the forest with ferocious beasts a long time ago, but it died out. When will the Wanshi tribe die out? A man whispered. "Stop talking. Take care of the things." Yin Jiu whispered to several people in the carts. "Got it." The others in the carts answered. "Xiao Xian, you should also be careful. Although the Wanshi tribe may not really fight with us, it's always good to be on guard." Yin Jiu looked at Xiao Xian. "Yes, I will." Xiao Xian looked at the approaching figures. Because people have been walking here for a long time, it formed a dirt road without grass. The huge mammoths stepped on the road, shaking the dust on the ground. Hundreds of people, plus a dozen mammoths bigger than the giant oxen pulling the carts, together with the dust raised, looked a bit murderous. There were so many of them that in order to avoid conflict, the leader of the Lu tribe took the initiative to ask everyone to move aside and give way to the main road. The other side didn't mean to be modest. Compared with before, the mammoths sped up a lot. If the Lu tribe didn't move aside, they would probably hit them directly. There were several people sitting on each mammoth. In addition to some looted materials on the back of the mammoths, there were young women tied up. Looking at their embarrassed appearance and clothes, they were not people of the Wanshur tribe. They were robbed and were one of the trophies. In fact, not only the Wanshur tribe, but also many wars between tribes were like this. Some of the captives were killed, some were sold to the slave owners, and some young women were taken back as trophies. The leading mammoth had long tusks, and there were some decorations with blood stains on its body. Some were carved from bones, some were made of stone, and some were made of wood. The man sitting on the head of the elephant was wearing a head ornament like a ghost face carved from ivory. His hair looked very hard. The short ones stood up like steel needles, and the long ones were simply tied with bone ornaments. This man was tall and strong. His exposed, strong muscles seemed to contain explosive power. His eyes showed undisguised fierceness and arrogance. This man was the leader of this team of the Wanshur tribe. When he glanced at the team of the Lu tribe, his eyes were full of greed. He looked at the Lu tribe as if they were meat. But, thinking of the warning he received not long ago, he still restrained his desire to pull out his sword and rob them. Not only this leader, but those people of the Wanshur tribe walking on the ground also coveted the goods on the Lu tribe's carts. They looked at the leader from time to time, waiting for his order to take action. The people of the Lu tribe were all tense. They didn't expect to meet the team of the Wanshur tribe today, but they wouldn't flinch, let alone give away the goods. The leader of the Wanshur tribe ignored the eyes of his subordinates. He just glanced at the team of the Lu tribe. His eyes flashed past Xiao Xian and didn't stay for long. But every time he looked at the meat birds on the carts, he paused for a moment. With a gloomy face, he whipped the mammoth and shouted, "Hurry up!" The mammoth cried out in pain and sped up its pace. The dust around them rose higher. The wind just blew the dust towards the team of the Lu tribe. The Lu tribe was so angry that they choked several times, but they didn't take any action. They were outnumbered, and the other side was not easy to deal with. They had to endure what they had to endure. They hated the Wanshur tribe even more. When the other side's long whip was lashed out, it almost brushed against the giant ox pulling the carts of the Lu tribe. If the warrior of the Lu tribe hadn't blocked it with his sword, the whip would have hit the ox. When many people of the Wanshur tribe passed by, they bared their teeth at the carts and waved their swords and spears. It seemed that they were saying, "Sooner or later, I will rob all your things." When all the people of the Wanshur tribe passed by and went far away and the dust dispersed, the people of the Lu tribe relaxed. The carts set off again. Xiao Xian looked at those figures far away and thought, "Is this the second Yin Jiao tribe in the central region? They are nothing." Chapter 191. Seeing the Wanshur tribe, the people of the Lu tribe, who had been talking excitedly, quieted down. Xiao Xian didn't say goodbye to the Lu tribe's caravan until they had traveled some distance. Here, Yinzhou's caravan was heading away from the ferocious Beast Mountain forest, while Xiao Xian was heading there. "It's not far from the Wanshur tribe. You can follow us a little further." Yin, Jiao suggested. "No, you don't have to worry." Xiao Xian pointed to the sky above. Seeing the eagle hovering in the sky, Yin Jiao remembered that Xiao Xian could use the eagle. After all, they had never heard that the Wanshur tribe had domesticated eagles, so the sky was safer. "Anyway, be careful of the Wanshur tribe," Yin Jiao said. "Okay, thank you." "Oh, right." Xiao Xian took out a stone card, which was the one the shaman gave him, with the totem of the Yin Jiao tribe painted on it. Showing the stone card to the people of the Lu tribe, Xiao Xian said, "This is the totem of our tribe. Maybe many people don't know it now, but I believe that soon everyone will remember it." The people in the car looked at the totem on the stone card, but didn't notice that Xiao Xian said everyone will remember it. They were sure that they had never seen or heard of this totem, but in order to show their friendliness, and for the sake of Xiao Xian's help, they still looked at it, thinking that they probably wouldn't see it again. Noticing the expressions of the people in the car, Xiao Xian didn't say much, just smiled, and then put away the stone card. He said goodbye to the people of the Lu tribe, made a gesture to the sky, and jumped on Cha-Cha's back after it landed. "Goodbye." Waving to Yin Jiao and the others, Xiao Xian patted Cha-Cha's head. "Let's go." Looking at the figure flying away in the sky, the people in the car looked away. "Do you think we'll see Xiao Xin again in the future?" someone asked. "I think the people of the Yinjiao tribe should be good, at least much better than the people of the Wanshi tribe. If the Yinjiao tribe is not too far away, we could go to their tribe." What a pity! They were talking about Xiao Xian and the Yinjiao tribe. After a while, they realized that Yinjiao hadn't said anything. So someone asked, "Yinjiao, tell us what you think." Yinjiao came back to his senses and looked at the others in the car. "What do I think?" Yinjiao pointed at the direction where Cha-Cha was flying and said, "Don't you think there's something wrong with that direction?" "That direction? Just now, he only thought about the Flaming Horns tribe and their tribe's totem that Xiao Xian had mentioned several times. Now that he thought about it, he found that the direction Cha-Cha was flying in was the direction of the Wanshi tribe and the ferocious beast mountain forest. Why would he go there? Did he go in the wrong direction? Will we see him again in the future? Someone asked worriedly. The ferocious beast forest was the only vast and dangerous place that directly bordered the central area. In other directions, after going out of the central area, there were many small tribes in the peripheral area. Only this area was recognized as a dangerous place. Even the people of the Wanshi tribe rarely went inside. Everyone who entered the forest was traveling with others in groups. Even so, there were still many people who lost their lives in the forest. No one wanted to live there. It was said that the ferocious beast forest used to be a little far from here, but later it expanded towards the central area. Alas! Yinjiao sighed, shook his head, and stopped talking. On the other side, Xiao Xian sat on Cha-Cha's back, looking down at the ground. He saw the team of the Wanshi tribe that he had met before. After flying for a while, he saw the dwelling place of the Wanshi tribe. Compared with the Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe, the style of the Wanshi tribe was more primitive and barbaric. But these people loved to decorate, so bone ornaments and stone ornaments were hung everywhere in the house. There were many people moving around in the tribe, and there were also some livestock. But they didn't seem to be farmed, but more like they were robbed from other places and then kept in captivity. They didn't expect to grow up, but just kept temporarily. When they wanted to eat, they would directly kill them. Moreover, winter seemed to be coming, but he didn't know whether it would snow here in winter. Xiao Xian thought. He didn't know what had happened in the Wanshi tribe. Many teams were running around, as if they were looking for something. Xiao Xian didn't intend to communicate with them for the time being. What he wanted to do most now was to see the old place of the Yinjiao tribe, that old he had mentioned. The totem flame in his mind had begun to surge. The closer he got to the place, the more violent and active it became, as if there was something there that was attracting it. Although the Wanshi tribe didn't domesticate flying beasts, if they flew over the tribe at a low altitude, they would definitely be attacked intensively. Cha-Cha flew over the Wanshi tribe from high up in the sky. When it flew, it excreted some excrement and cried out happily. Below, the teams of the Wanshi tribe, who were running around looking for someone, heard the eagle's cry. They looked up and took out bows and spears to guard against it. Sometimes some birds would run out of the forest and take away their food, and sometimes people. So when they heard the eagle cry, they looked at the eagle in the sky vigilantly. They just waited for the eagle to fly lower and then attacked. But after waiting for a while, the eagle didn't fly lower, but some bird excrement. Bird excrement fell on their heads, on their houses, and in the animal pens where the food was kept. Those who couldn't avoid it wiped the bird excrement on their heads and shouted loudly, but they couldn't hurt the initiator at all. The animals in the animal pens became restless because of the bird excrement. They ran around, afraid that the eagle in the sky would take them away. In their vague memories, some of their kind seemed to have been caught by this kind of bird that fell from the sky. Driven by the sense of crisis, these animals, who were not well cared for, became anxious. They hit the fence more fiercely. If they couldn't hit the fence, they hit other animals around them. Anyway, many of them were not of the same kind. A sheep with its horns cut off was being chased around by a cow. It was running and screaming. An old cow that was grazing on grass was kicked by a horse behind it. It fell directly into a haystack. It got up and started a fight with the horse angrily. The people of the Wan Shu tribe outside had to send people to suppress the disturbance in the animal pens. Cha-Cha didn't know that the bird excrement it took along the way had caused a disturbance in the Wan Shu tribe. After having a good time, it carried Xiao Xian and flew in the direction pointed by Xiao Xian. Compared with the place where people were active, the forest in front of it made it feel more comfortable. When it flew into the forest, the noise of the human tribes disappeared. There were more and more birds in the sky. If Xiao Xian was on Cha-Cha's back, Cha-Cha's flexibility would be limited, and Xiao Xian's strength could not be exerted. Therefore, he let Cha-Cha put him down and sneaked in the forest. He took the opportunity to have a good look at this strange yet familiar place. The human civilization he had seen before was gradually fading away. Here, everything returned to the most primitive state. There were no houses, no caravans, no finely woven clothes. The cruel rules of nature played out again. Xiao Xian stood on a high tree, looking at the forest in front of him, and took a deep breath. Just by taking a breath, he could smell the restlessness and danger in the air. However, he was not afraid at all. On the contrary, a long-lost excitement grew stronger. Jumping down from the tree and walking through the forest, Xiao Xian did not need a transition period. Almost as soon as he stepped into the forest, Xiao Xian had already adjusted himself to the best state. If Chu Su of the Mang tribe and Su of the Eight Limbs tribe saw Xiao Xian now, they would find it hard to believe. After all, what left a deep impression on them was Xiao Xian's undisguised barbaric and violent style. But now it was completely different. Nimble, swift, and hidden like those ferocious beasts that were good at surprise attacks, cunning and dangerous. There was no extra breath exposed, as if he had already blended into the forest. There were many wild beasts and ferocious beasts in the forest. There were several times when Xiao Xian brushed past those ferocious beasts. Here, he was alone. When there was no hunting, he did not want to provoke those ferocious predators. He had to save his strength to find his target. Every bit of strength was used in the right place. To survive in the forest, one had to use the least amount of strength to get the best result and save the rest to save one's life. A vine quietly approached Xiao Xian from behind. Even the rustling sound of friction could not be heard. When it approached Xiao Xian, a bud-like thing at the top of the vine suddenly opened, like a big mouth with sharp teeth, and bit at Xiao Xian's leg. With a flash of the knife, the big mouth at the top of the vine was cut off. Some dark green juice flowed out of the cut, and then the vine quickly shrank back. Xiao Xian did not pay much attention to the vine. He had seen many plants like this in the hunting ground before. He was almost there. Xiao Xian already felt the totem flame in his mind becoming excited. A huge rock attracted Xiao Xian's attention. The huge rock stood there, and it did not seem to fit in with the surrounding environment. The huge rock was covered with thick moss and all kinds of rotten leaves. If one did not look carefully, one would not be able to tell that it was a rock. After checking the surroundings and finding no dangerous objects, Xiao Xian approached it carefully and scraped off the thick layer of moss with his stone knife. There were some deep dents on the surface of the rock. He scraped off a large piece of moss and did a simple cleaning so that the dents on the rock could be seen more clearly. On the surface of the huge rock, there were some paintings of very yin-jiao style flame double-horned pattern and some words. Probably for some reason, some parts of the rock were worn down and many dents could not be connected. Only the two biggest words were yin-jiao, and the other smaller words were hard to recognize. Yin-jiao, after removing the thick layer of moss and rotten materials, finally saw the light of day again. Just like the rock paintings of the Eight Limbs tribe, these huge rocks also served as boundary markers, telling everyone who came here that this was the territory of the Yinjiao tribe. Besides that huge rock, Xiao Xian found several other similar huge rocks of different sizes and with different degrees of wear. Some looked like they had been cut in half, while others were mostly buried in the ground. Old He said that the roots of the Yinjiao tribe were still here. Before coming here, Xiao Xian did not know, nor could he feel. But now, as soon as he stepped into this area, Xiao Xian felt that there was a kind of attraction there, attracting him. It was the first time that Xiao Xian came here, but he felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Xiao Xian understood that it was because of the fire seed in the totem. Following the attraction, Xiao Xian quickly approached that area, and in the process, Xiao Xian also found a phenomenon. It seemed that the closer he got to the central area, the fewer ferocious beasts he saw. Perhaps, as old he said, the roots of the Yinjiao tribe were still here. So, just like the fire seed deterred wild beasts and ferocious beasts, it also had a certain effect here, but it was not as obvious as the fire seed. Without more ferocious beasts to disturb him, Xiao Xian moved forward a little faster. The closer he went, the more traces of the tribe Xiao Xian could find. For example, houses, some towering stone pillars, etc. Because too many years had passed, some of them had lost their original shape, and with the change of the terrain, they were seriously damaged. There were no people, and ferocious beasts rarely came here, so this place was almost covered by all kinds of plants. But compared to those in the forest, the plants here were a little better. They were not too luxuriant, at least they would not be completely covered by the plants. The collapsed houses had long become the habitat of plants and microorganisms. Xiao Xian had to scrape off a layer to see the real traces below. The wooden things had long decayed, leaving behind only some stone. In some places, the remains of some pottery could be dug out. Xiao Xian walked in this place, no longer scraping and digging. He just looked at this area that had been uninhabited for nearly 1,000 years. Some stone houses had collapsed on the ground, while others were half on the ground and half in the water. A stream flowed by, washing away the stones that looked like tiles. Without the tall trees to block it, the tall and thick stone pillar was very conspicuous. However, the stone pillar had been covered by green vines. Xiao Xian spent some effort to pull off all the vines, and he had to be careful not to damage the stone pillar. After the vines were pulled off, the carvings on the stone pillar were also revealed. Compared to the boundary, steely-like boulders he had seen before, the carvings on this stone pillar were better preserved and clearer. There were patterns of the flaming horns, some written records, and some drawings that Xiao Xian could not understand. Was this used for sundials? Or for sacrifice? Probably for sundials? Xiao Xian thought that the sacrifice was usually near the fire pit, and the place where the fire pit was should be the place Xiao Xian was looking for. The sun gradually set, and the afterglow shone on the ruins, adding a sense of desolation to the history. Xiao Xian stood on the tall stone pillar and looked into the distance. Under the red sky in the distance, there were undulating mountains and woodlands. No matter how glorious it had been, now it was just a remnant of overgrown weeds. With a long sigh, Xiao Xian came down from the stone pillar and walked toward the place. There was nothing special about that place. It was slightly flat, and there were some plants that were not tall growing on it. Little flowers were scattered among them. After walking around the place, he came to the center and stopped. Xiao Xian squatted down and put his hands on the ground. He felt that there seemed to be something moving and flowing below. Chapter 192. The sun was setting on the other side of the distant mountain, and the light in the forest was gradually fading. The surroundings had become much darker. At the moment, Xiao Xian did not pay attention to the passage of time, nor did he pay attention to whether there was any danger around. He had a feeling that this place was safe. There would be no sneak attacks from those dangerous plants, nor would there be any ferocious predators. All his attention was on the ground under his palms. He felt a little warmth coming from below, along with his palms, along his arms, and all the way up to the totem in his mind. It stimulated the flames on the totem to roll unceasingly. The evening wind blew, and there was something different in the wind than usual. The surroundings began to quiet down. The original sounds of birds, insects, beasts in the forest, the sound of the stream, and so on all gradually faded away. Whoosh, whoosh. It was like the sound of flames jumping in the wind. But there was not a single spark in the surroundings. Even because the sun had set and night had fallen, the unrecognizable ruins had been shrouded in darkness. Xiao Xian kept staring at his palms on the ground, not moving at all. He felt that the ground under his palms was getting warmer and warmer, as if something was spreading underground and was about to break out of the earth. A little flame seeped through the gaps between his fingers, especially conspicuous in the already dark night. Soon, more flames appeared under Xiao Xian's palms, and from the small spark at the beginning, they grew bigger and bigger. Xiao Xian's palms could not cover them. After the flames under his palms grew bigger, they divided into 6 branches and gradually spread in 6 directions. There were no rising flames, but like magma, they spread in each direction until they reached the forest, where Xiao Xian could not see. Withdrawing his hands and standing up, Xiao Xian looked at the 6 branches extending from the same point. Was this the root of the Yinjiao tribe that Old He's ancestors had mentioned? Was the center point where the 6 branches converged where the original fire seed was? While thinking, Xiao Xian suddenly felt that something was wrong. He seemed to have fallen into an uncontrollable but special state again. Looking at the ground under his feet, which should have been full of flowers and soil, it had turned into stones. The size and placement of these stones were very familiar, as if he was standing in the fire pit of the Yinjiao tribe. Fire pit? Xiao Xian looked up at other places. The original ruins were gone, replaced by vague images of people standing not far away. Behind the crowd were stone houses that were much taller than people, just like the murals in the cave at the foot of the Yinjiao tribe. Compared with most tribal houses, these stone houses were much bigger, taller, and much more magnificent. There were also some carved stone statues of people and beasts, some of which were warriors killing ferocious beasts. Closer to the fire pit, there were some people standing in an arrangement similar to what Xiao Xian saw with his own eyes during the sacrificial ceremony in the tribe. There were also warriors performing the sacrificial dance, and there were also the erected pillars and offerings. The difference was that there were 6 people standing closer to the fire pit. Xiao Xian could not see their specific appearances, only vague figures. Their decorations were more gorgeous than the warriors performing the sacrificial dance, and the ornaments hanging from their heads and bodies were more complicated. A figure stepped into the fire pit and walked toward Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian knew that this person was not really for himself. This person's purpose should be the fire seed where he was, and this person should be one of the shamans of the Yinjiao tribe. These people could be called ancestors. If the people of the tribe on the other side of the river saw this scene, they would probably kneel down again. Xiao Xian stood there, quietly looking at the figures around him. The shaman walked to the fire seed and put down something, then stepped back out of the fire pit. He stood by the fire pit and began to raise his arms, probably chanting. The surroundings seemed to be brighter. Xiao Xian looked around him. The flames quickly rose up and wrapped around him. Because of the sudden rise of the flames, the surroundings became brighter. The people standing not far away were also illuminated. However, Xiao Xian still couldn't see clearly. He could only make out a rough outline. Men and women, old and young. There were also some accompanying hunting dogs that had probably finished their engraving. Everyone was looking in the direction of the fire seed. No matter where Xiao Xian looked, even if he could not see the expressions of those figures, he could feel that they were all looking in his direction. He lifted his foot and walked out of the center, out of the range of the fire. Xiao Xian was like a bystander, walking in the crowd and looking at the figures around him. They did not change because of Xiao Xian's walk, because the two of them existed at different points in time. These were all reenactments of the past, just like when Xiao Xian followed the advance group into the Green Land and saw the Green Thief at night. The people standing around knelt down in the direction of the fire pit devoutly. The surroundings were covered with a layer of fire. Looking back, Xiao Xian looked in the direction of the fire pit. The rolling flames were higher and fiercer than the ones he had seen in the Yinjiao tribe when he participated in the sacrificial ceremony. The surrounding sky seemed to be burning, dyed in the color of fire. It was incomparably magnificent. This was only the first of the 3 flames of the fire pit, but it was already so powerful. What would happen when he reached the 3rd flame? When he first saw the flame of the fire seed in the Yinjiao tribe, he thought it was incredible and magnificent. But now, seeing the scene in front of him, he knew what the real flame of the fire seed was. It was like a picture once drawn on a roll of animal skin. This was the scene of the glorious era. Just as Xiao Xian stood by the fire pit in the old land of the Yinjiao tribe, looking at the images that had passed away for nearly 1,000 years, on the other side of the river far away from the central region. At this time, there were not many people in the Flaming Horns tribe who would go out. The mountain foot area was already dark. The night swallows were also flying around actively, staring at the houses, waiting for someone to come out. Then they would rush up and attack. The higher up the mountain, the more flames there were. Some warriors were burning fires in their houses. They were either cooking food or just sitting around the fire and talking. But these flames were nothing in the dark. At the top of the mountain, the shaman sensed something unusual. He rushed out of the stone house like a gust of wind and headed for the fire pit. The warriors who were guarding around the fire pit wanted to inform the shaman and the chief, but they didn't expect that the shaman had already come. Looking at the scene in the fire pit, the shaman seemed to be stunned. He stood there, his mind blank for a moment. In the fire pit, the bean-sized flame was now jumping violently. Then it suddenly rose, rolled up, and expanded to the whole fire pit. It was not the time for sacrifice, and no ceremony was held. The shaman didn't even do anything. But the flame in the fire pit was burning just like the annual sacrifice after winter. And it was burning by itself. Furthermore, the rolling flames were even more intense than the flames that were ignited during the annual sacrificial ceremony. This is... The chief who came after receiving the report was also stunned after seeing the scene in the fire pit. Chief Ao's words woke the shaman up from his blank state. He was just too excited to react. He's here. He found it. Xian found the old land of the Yinjiao. The shaman knelt on the ground and kowtowed in the direction of the fire pit. In the hearts of the tribesmen, the shaman had always been a master. But now he was kneeling on the ground and crying. But no one on the scene would laugh at him. They knelt on the ground together with the shaman. Although they didn't quite understand what it meant, they had a vague idea in their hearts that made them very excited. Xiao Xian had left the tribe for a long time. Since the end of the rainy season, now the winter was coming. No one knew whether Xiao Xian could cross the river safely, or what he would encounter after crossing the river safely. After all, he was just a young warrior. Although they all hoped that Xiao Xian could find something on the other side, they all felt uneasy. After all, there were too many dangers on the other side of the river. Could Xiao Xian solve them alone? But now, the change in the fire pit and the shaman's words told them that Xiao Xian not only crossed the river safely, but also found the old land of the tribe. Several old people who rushed over were so excited that they didn't know what to say. The people at the foot of the mountain had also noticed the changes on the mountain. The rising flames were too obvious, and the night swallows that had been flying around arrogantly just a moment ago had now retreated far away. Just like during the annual sacrifice, they were afraid. Old Ku walked out of the door and looked at the fire pit at the top of the mountain. He said to Caesar next to him, "Is that caused by Xian?" Caesar stared at the top of the mountain and looked at Old Ku. He made some noises from his nose, as if he was responding to Old Ku's words. Not only did the Yinjiao tribe have obvious changes, even on the other side of the river, no matter if it was in the central area or the border area, many people had changed. Today, Yin Shuo had gone out to the mountains to hunt a beast that wasn't too big. After his strength had increased, although the totem patterns were still faint, it was much better than before. Sometimes, he could even hunt some beasts back for his wife and children. At this moment, Yin Shuo and his family were sitting around the bonfire, eating barbecued meat and chatting. Yin Shuo noticed something and looked at his arm. The faint totem pattern had actually appeared again. Moreover, the pattern was darker and clearer than before. He didn't say anything. He just clenched his fist tightly and smiled at his wife and children. His eyes reflected the bright light of the fire. "I feel that the thing we have been waiting for is coming soon." On the grassland, Oldie was lighting the fire at home and processing some of the herbs he had dug up today. He was busy when he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He didn't wake his wife, who was already asleep. He added some firewood to the fire and hurriedly got up to get a basin of water. With the help of the fire, he looked at the reflection in the basin. He saw that there were some patterns on his face. The color was not deep, and because the light was too dim, he couldn't see clearly. But he knew what it was. It was exactly the same as the patterns on his father's face that year. That kind of power was real, and not the illusory and unpredictable feeling from before. It existed in his body, in every piece of flesh, flowing by a wide river. Wooden boats that were several meters high and even more than 10 meters high were docked on the shore. Compared to the boats of other tribes, these boats were already considered luxurious. Not far from these large ships, some small, tattered boats were densely docked on another shore. Compared to the large ships, these small boats looked pitiful. Gathering on the shore next to the boat belt, some wanderers gathered there. Every day they had to work until very late before coming back. Then they all gathered here to make a big fire and get some food to eat. It was the same now. They laughed and talked. Compared to those who had nowhere to go and had to endure hunger every day, they were better off, even if their days were not very comfortable. While they were talking, the people around the fire seemed to have seen something incredible and were all stunned. There was no more chatter and laughter. A few people who were slightly taller than the others, who were topless and eating, felt the strange situation around them. Just as they were about to ask, they saw that everyone was pointing at them as if they were being strangled. They couldn't say a complete sentence for a long time. However, when they looked at where the crowd was pointing and saw their naked upper bodies, they were also shocked. Their hands trembled, and even their precious stone rice bowls fell to the ground. Half a bowl of meat soup spilled on the ground. If it was any other time, they would probably feel sorry for it. They would even lie on the ground and lick it, picking up the bits of meat that fell to the ground and eating it. But now, no one paid attention to the meat scraps. Totem patterns, no one knew who spoke first, but it was like a torch that ignited a barrel of oil. Totem patterns. Although these totem patterns didn't last long, this night was destined to make some people lose sleep, and it also made some people have a drastic change in their mentality. And Xiao Xian, who caused all this but didn't know it, stood by the fire pit in the old land of the Yinjiao tribe, watching the scene disappear. Everything returned to the original ruins. There were no tall stone houses, no stone statues, no dense crowds, no shamans. Everyone was gone. The fire pit was not what it used to be, and the 6 extended branches had disappeared. Xiao Xian let out a long sigh. The glory of the past is gone. The scene was illusory, and only he could see it. However, when Xiao Xian saw the situation on the surrounding grassland, his pupils shrank. Where the 6 branches extended from the fire seed like pulses, the flowers and plants that grew on them had all disappeared, leaving only the bare ground. It seemed that it wasn't all illusory. Just now, the 6 branches of the fire seed had really appeared. At this time, in the Wan Shi tribe, which was not too far away from the ferocious beast mountain forest. There's something strange in the forest. Although it's not clear, I have a feeling that the biggest threat of the Wan Shi tribe lies there. The shaman of the Wan Shi tribe, with a bone ornament on his face, was facing the direction of the forest, as if he wanted to devour people. The chief of the Wan Shi tribe, who was standing beside the shaman, looked at the direction of the forest and ordered the people he called over. Go get ready. Tomorrow, we'll take the Wan Shi beasts into the forest. Chapter 193. Early in the morning, Xiao Xian woke up on the high stone pillar. He yawned and stretched his arms and legs, then looked around. At first glance, there was no difference from yesterday, but with a little closer look, he could see the lines extending in 6 directions among the flowers and plants. Coming down from the stone pillar, Xiao Xian ate the bird eggs given by the Lu tribe. Cha-Cha, who had hunted for food early in the morning, was flying in the sky and didn't find any danger around for the time being. The fire pit in the old haunt had changed and was covered by layers of mud and stones. Xiao Xian wanted to dig, but on second thought, there was no fire seed, so it didn't matter whether the fire pit was buried or not. Let's leave it like this for now. With the fire pit as the center, Xiao Xian recalled the illusions he saw last night and walked around. The changes were too big. If he hadn't seen the illusions last night, Xiao Xian really couldn't imagine what kind of buildings there used to be. Originally, he wanted to dig up some special objects, but after walking around, he didn't find anything. Maybe something was buried deep in the ground, or maybe it was destroyed long ago. It was also possible that it was taken away by the Yinjiao tribesmen when they left. Xiao Xian planned to search carefully, but suddenly there was an eagle's cry in the sky. His hands paused, and he put aside a damaged pot he just dug out. Xiao Xian sneaked into the woods in the direction of Cha-Cha's warning. Early in the morning, the Wanshi tribe sent more than 100 people into the woods in 5 teams to search for people. The shaman and the chief told them that if they saw people who were not from the tribe, no matter who they were, no matter what they looked like, no matter what they offered, kill them. Those who could bring back their heads would be rewarded by the shaman and the chief. Even though the shaman and the chief didn't say who were in the woods or how many people there were, everyone was excited when they heard that there would be a reward. They all wanted to get the credit. Those who had just returned from the tribal war were not sent out. In order to find out what was going on, the shaman and the chief decided to temporarily send out more than 100 people to investigate the situation. The others who were left in the tribe looked at those who were walking towards the ferocious beast mountain forest with envy. There were so many people and the Wanshi beasts, so there shouldn't be too much danger. It would be great if they could make contributions. The people who were about to enter the forest were envied by their clansmen. They led the Wanshi beasts and went on their way proudly. The Wanshi tribe didn't raise cattle, sheep, and horses on a large scale. First, they weren't interested in raising them. Second, which was the most important point, they put more energy into raising the Wanshi beasts. The so-called Wanshi beasts didn't exist naturally. They were bred by the Wanshi tribe, using a variety of wild beasts, and even some ferocious beasts. They were much stronger than wild beasts. Because the inheritance of the Wanshi beasts was not stable, each generation of the Wanshi beasts was different from the previous generation. For the sake of convenience and fame, the Wanshi tribe named them Wanshi beasts. The Wanshi beasts were bred by directional selection. For hundreds of years, some of them could be inherited stably. However, the Wanshi tribe needed ferocious beasts, which was their first choice. Therefore, even if there were many deformed species and even many defects, they were still kept by the Wanshi tribe. Those beasts with stable inheritance but weak attack power were more often used as food. These Wanshi beasts were larger than the hounds trained by ordinary tribes, and they all looked different. Some looked like dogs, some looked like cats, and some looked like cats. Their sizes were also different, and the patterns on their bodies were even more complicated. The only thing they had in common was that their eyes were very fierce, and they were extremely cruel. When they looked at people, it seemed that they would rush up and bite them. When waging war against other tribes, the Wanshi beasts would also be used by the Wanshi beasts to track those threats that must be killed. The Wanshi beasts were tied by some thick and strong straw ropes that had been soaked in special treatment. If the totem warriors of the Wanshi tribe were not strong enough, they couldn't pull these ferocious beasts and had to prevent them from biting off the ropes. 100 people were divided into 5 teams and entered the ferocious beast mountain forest. Each team took 3 or 4 Wanshi beasts. They were not close to each other, but not too far away. If a team had an abnormal situation, they would whistle loudly and the nearby teams would rush over after hearing it. Although they were very excited by the words of the shaman and the chief when they left the tribe, they couldn't help but feel nervous after entering the ferocious beast mountain forest. No one spoke. Only the Wanshi beasts growled from time to time. They didn't find any abnormalities or any trace of people. They thought that with the Wanshi beasts, they could track the target after entering the forest. Unexpectedly, after entering the forest for a while, they met several beasts, but still found nothing. When hunting in the forest, Xiao Xian had already learned how to hide his traces and breath better. There were so many ferocious beasts in the forest that were good at tracking. At that time, they hadn't been discovered when they were hunting, so now they wouldn't be easily tracked by the Wanshi beasts. They entered the forest early in the morning. At noon, all the teams were a little tired. They didn't find the target, but they met several threats from other animals and plants. They couldn't hide their figures. Every team had more than 20 people, plus the Wan-Shur beasts. How could they hide? Besides, they were not good at this. Why can't we find a target? A warrior of the Wan-Shur tribe said during the break. I really hope we can find a target soon and take his head back to get the reward. Another warrior said with a longing look. You? Let's see who can act faster. I won't give the prey to you. Maybe there is more than one person. Maybe there are several people. Even if there is only one person, we can split him. Someone interrupted. That's right. Anyway, it's up to our abilities. Whoever grabs, it will get it. While they were talking, a man on the side suddenly said, Hey, what's that? The leader stood up and walked over to a big stone. Usually, they wouldn't care if they saw such a stone. But now, this stone didn't seem to be an ordinary stone. From where they were before, they could only see one side of the boulder. When he walked to the other side, he saw the indentations on the boulder that had been scraped away. Who scratched it? The leader asked. The others shook their heads. The scratches on the moss were relatively new. If they weren't scratched by their own people, it meant that someone had been here just now. The leader was not the only one who thought of this. The others also reacted. Someone really came here? Great. What? Yinjiao? What's Yinjiao? The man who saw the words on the stone asked. I heard that there used to be a big tribe here, but it died out later. Could it be this tribe? It's very likely. Speaking of this, a strong excitement rose in everyone's heart. What a big tribe. Although he didn't know what a big tribe was like 1,000 years ago, he could tell from the big tribes in the central region that each tribe had some very precious things. Maybe there were even precious things like jades and fire crystals that people coveted. At the thought of this, everyone in the team was itching. They also knew that the forest was very dangerous and there were many ferocious beasts. But now they had more people, and they should be fine if they were careful, right? The people who sneaked into the forest didn't come for this big tribe, did they? Someone said, No, we can't let others take it away. We have to hurry. Without the leaders saying more, the others hurried to stand up. They had gained a lot of benefits from the tribal war, and when they encountered the remains of such a big tribe, the first thing they thought of was naturally whether they could get something good. Yin Jiao said that the people of the Wan-Shur tribe were very greedy. Many times, such greed would suppress other emotions in their hearts, so that they would do something crazy in many people's eyes. In recent years, the slave owners became more and more fond of coming to the central region, especially to the places where the Wan-Shur tribe had been, where there were many tourists. Before leaving, a warrior of the Wan-Shur tribe pulled down his leather pants and planned to pee on the big stone engraved with Yinjiao before leaving. For the tribe, this kind of stone engraved with the tribe's name or totem was not just a boundary marker. It was very important to the people of the tribe, just like the rock paintings of the Mang tribe. If someone peed on the rock paintings, he would be fiercely attacked by the people of the Mang tribe. According to the tribal rules, this was a kind of provocation. However, a tribe that had been extinct for nearly 1,000 years, what was there to be afraid of? The people of the Wan-Shur tribe didn't take this seriously at all. Even if someone came to find them, they would just kill him. Just now, someone directly cut with a knife, but unfortunately, the stone was good, so he didn't directly cut a big hole. It was better to go back and directly move it away and then make some other tools. The team planned to continue their search. After a few steps, the leader felt something was wrong and looked back. Beside the big stone, the man still maintained his original posture. Could it be that he couldn't pee or what? Hey, are you done? The leader asked. No one answered. The other warriors also complained. If you want to pee, then just pee. If it wasn't for the fact that we had to hurry over to find the target, we would also pee. But why are you just standing there? Stalling for time? What if the credit was taken away by others? When someone was about to speak again, he was stopped by the leader. As the leader of this team, he was not stupid. He had found something wrong. He carefully walked over, took out his stone knife, and poked the man standing there. The man who had been standing there fell down without any sound. Everyone was nervous. When did he get hurt? Why didn't the Wan-Shur beasts notice it? Rustle, rustle, rustle. Somewhere in the bushes there was a slight sound, which was hard to notice if one didn't pay attention. The three Wan-Shur beasts had good hearing, so they suddenly became manic. They roared and rushed over there. The people who led the Wan-Shur beasts also loosened their hands and let them chase after the man. The leader winked at the others and asked them to be careful. Then he led the others to chase after the man. The sound in the bushes was louder. It seemed that someone had just left here quickly. Within 2 breaths, he had run far away. Go after him. Ah! A warrior was hung up by one leg. He struggled softly for a few times and then stopped making any sound. There was a thorn in his body. Then, 3 more warriors of the Wanshur tribe were tied up and hung up one after another. After being hung up, their cries were stopped by a thorn. At this time, the others were also frightened. They looked at the dense forest around them timidly. The bushes and weeds around them were getting thicker and thicker, which seriously blocked their sight. They could only judge by their hearing. They also wondered how many people were hiding around them. One of the warriors just cursed, and suddenly a sharp pain came from his ankle. He thought he would be hung up like the previous warriors, but he didn't expect that the strength of his foot directly dragged him to the side at a very fast speed. After another man was dragged away, he stopped making any sound. The people who stayed there didn't chase after him. They held weapons and looked around vigilantly. They slowed down their pace of chasing after the Wanshur beast. The leader waved his knife to cut a pile of weeds next to him. He didn't see anything suspicious, so he spat and cursed in his heart. Until now, they hadn't even seen the enemy's shadow, but they had been tricked by the enemy's traps again and again. However, they couldn't find where the traps were set. In just a few breaths, for people had been killed. This feeling of grievance made them very unhappy. They were irritable, and now they couldn't keep calm. In the past, they had never encountered such a situation when they waged war against other tribes. At that time, they would shake their bodies and increase their strength to the extreme. They would rush over with their knives and cut anyone they saw. But it was not the case here. This made them very uncomfortable. Moreover, this was the ferocious beast's mountain forest. They had to worry about ferocious beasts or other threats that might appear at any time. Now, they had to pay attention to their feet. The Wanshur beast ran far away, and they couldn't call it back. It seemed that someone led the Wanshur beast away first, and then the people hiding in the forest came to deal with them. The leader thought in his heart, "Do you want to blow the whistle?" Someone asked the leader. No. How long had it been? How could he blow the whistle? If others saw it, he would lose face, and his prestige would be damaged. The leader's eyes were full of haze. Whoosh! Another person was pulled up by the neck. He opened his mouth, but couldn't make a sound. He wanted to shout, but he was tied up so tightly that he couldn't make a sound. His face was distorted. Puff! A wooden splinter pierced his neck. The poison made him lose consciousness quickly, and he stopped struggling. The leaders looked at the sky. Silk thread? Such silk thread. Was it the 8 Limbs tribe? That shouldn't be the case. The 8 Limbs tribe was a little far from here, and the 8 Limbs tribe couldn't interfere here. It didn't matter if the Wanshur tribe destroyed several small tribes, but if a big tribe interfered, it would affect more than just the surrounding forces. Besides, what was so important about the ferocious beast's mountain forest? The more they thought about it, the more confused they were. The leader stopped thinking about it. What he needed to do now was to find out the suspicious people here and kill them. Chapter 194. There were a lot of weeds around, and there were bushes every few steps. Go back. The leader found that the environment here was unfavorable to them, so he made a prompt decision to let the rest of the people retreat along the original path. Although they didn't know what kind of traps were around, at least there were no traps along the way. Just as he was thinking about this, 2 more screams sounded. 2 warriors fell to the ground. One of them was stabbed with a poisonous thorn like the previous one, while the other had his neck slit. Rustle, rustle, rustle. Someone was running quickly in the grass. The leader's face was ferocious, and he quickly chased after him, but he was not careless. He even figured out the movement pattern of the figure in front of him and almost stepped on the place where the former stepped. However, many people behind him were not so lucky. They were all tripped by something, cut by a knife, and then tripped again after 2 steps. Then, they fell down and never got up again. The leader heard the movement behind him and guessed that his men might be in trouble. However, he didn't stop. Instead of slowing down, he sped up again and caught up with the figure in the grass in front of him. He pulled out a ferocious smile on his face. Finally, I found you. Now go to hell. Cut off the opponent's head and take it back to get a reward. Maybe he could get some fire crystals to improve himself, and maybe he could be promoted to a senior totem warrior. He had made countless contributions and was only one step away from a senior totem warrior. As long as he made one more contribution and got some benefits, he would be promoted to a higher level, and his status in the tribe would be higher. He would be qualified to have more women, food, resources, and power. Thinking of this, he became more excited, and the totem patterns on his face made him look more ferocious. He suddenly increased the strength of his feet and waved his right arm holding the stone knife, bringing a gust of wind. Feeling the wind from the blade behind him, Xiao Xian's right foot fiercely stomped on the ground. The ground under his feet emitted a soft bang sound, as if a solid block of earth had been shaken apart. His entire body borrowed the force of the impact and abruptly turned around, rushing towards the opponent. At this time, the leader saw the real appearance of Xiao Xian. He had never seen the totem patterns on Xiao Xian's face before, and Xiao Xian's young age also surprised him. However, none of this was important. He only needed to kill the other party. Both of them were very fast, and in the blink of an eye, they were only a few steps apart from each other. At this moment, Xiao Xian took a few more steps, and in this extremely short period of time, he changed directions several times. His figure was somewhat erratic, as if he was slashing to the left and dodging to the right. For a moment, the leader still couldn't figure out what Xiao Xian was thinking. He hesitated for a moment. At the same time, the momentum of the stone knife in his hand changed slightly. It was no longer as straightforward. He wanted to determine which direction Xiao Xian would go based on his movements, but suddenly he met Xiao Xian's eyes. At this moment, he couldn't help but shudder. Xiao Xian's eyes reminded him of a few years ago when he came to the ferocious beast forest with a few people from the tribe. They encountered a ferocious beast that was not only strong, but also very cunning and good at hiding. They couldn't avoid it, even if they pretended to be dead. The few people who came in together were all intermediate totem warriors. They were arrogant outside, but more than half of them were killed by the ferocious beast, and the rest fled quickly. At that time, the ferocious beast didn't look conspicuous or big, but they were so scared that they didn't even have the courage to fight back. If they didn't escape, they would die. This was the only thought he had at that time, and it was also a nightmare that lasted for many years. This time, he heard that there was a big reward, and he felt that his strength had improved a lot. So he entered the forest again. And now, he once again had the same thought as back then. At the moment when he met Xiao Xian's eyes, he had an illusion, as if he had returned to the situation at that time, when he faced the ferocious beast that made them tremble in fear. The leader's body paused for a very short moment, and a voice in his heart was screaming, "Run, run, run away from here." In this kind of 2 versus 1 battle, the slightest negligence could make the difference between life and death. Blow the whistle. He only had time to shout this sentence before his chest was pierced by a stone knife. After killing one person, Xiao Xian didn't stop. He reached out his other hand and grabbed a wrist. After the leader, there was another person who followed. Perhaps in terms of strength, he might not be the leader's opponent, but in terms of speed, he was comparable. Just now, he clearly saw that the leader was in a disadvantageous situation, but he didn't help. Instead, he chose to take advantage of the opportunity to sneak attack. He didn't expect that he would be caught. Xiao Xian exerted force in his hand, and with a crack, the wrist holding the knife was crushed. The intense pain for his wrist made him scream in pain. Naturally, he couldn't hold the ivory knife in his hand. Xiao Xian caught the ivory knife that was polished white with one hand, and with the other hand holding the stone knife, he chopped upwards. All of this happened in a very short time. The person holding the ivory knife was still in shock, regret, and the pain in his wrist. He didn't have time to think about how to avoid this attack. He still had a dark brown stone knife in his other hand. He instinctively raised it, wanting to block Xiao Xian's knife first. Bang! The two stone knives collided. The man felt a strong force pass through the knife in his hand and hit his arm violently, as if it was going to break. Such a tyrannical force forcefully lifted his arm up, and his entire body fell backward along with his arm, as if someone was dragging him from behind. Because of this, he didn't have a chance to cover himself. Xiaoxian's stone knife had already pierced his body. After dealing with the two people who followed him, Xiaoxian wiped the blood on the stone knife with the grass next to him. After many years of hunting, he had wandered on the edge of life and death many times. After coming here, he had seen the cruel war between tribes. Xiaoxian was used to this kind of ruthless method. Taking a long breath, Xiaoxian heard a whistle not far away. Someone had heard the leader's last cry and blew the whistle for help. The people closest to here should be rushing here. Xiaoxian didn't turn back to deal with the people who were left behind. The smell of people and the noise over there should be enough to attract the hungry birds, right? Xiaoxian specially found this place. Perhaps because of the fire pit, there weren't many dangerous plants and fierce beasts in the old haunt. When he looked around in the morning, he saw some bird footprints. From the footprints and some traces in the bushes, he could roughly guess what kind of birds they were. They were birds similar to the forest raccos. When they pecked, it was like being hit by a hoe. It was enough to make those people suffer. Looking at the sky and the Cha-Cha's flight path, Xiaoxian didn't pay attention to the people behind him and quickly left. The person who blew the whistle wanted to retreat after seeing the people around him fall down one by one. The reward was built on the foundation of being alive. He didn't want to lose his life. At this moment, he heard the leaders shout. Naturally, he blew the whistle as hard as he could. He ran back while blowing the whistle. He was too nervous and didn't pay attention to his feet. He tripped over something and thought it was a trap or some dangerous vines. He didn't even look at it. After a while, he realized that it was just a piece of soil. He took a long breath and was about to get up when he heard the sound of footsteps. Did other people come to help? No, those weren't human footsteps. He got up and wanted to run away, but he found that the same footsteps could be heard on the way back. A figure jumped out from the bushes and went straight to the person who still had the whistle in his mouth. They didn't have obvious wings. They weren't even as big as the Lu tribe's birds, but they had big beaks. Their eyes were eager. It was the look of someone who saw food. Screams resounded through the forest. The people who heard the whistle couldn't help but pause and feel a chill in their hearts. At this moment, Xiaoxian, who was already far away, was squatting on a big tree and looking at a bear not far from the tree. There were many kinds of giant bears in the forest, but this one was undoubtedly the strongest among the giant bears. Maybe their weight wasn't the heaviest among the giant bears, but their speed and strength were definitely not weak. They had slender limbs compared to other bears. This characteristic made them look less clumsy than other bears. Instead, it allowed them to walk faster for longer periods of time, move more easily, and run faster. It had a short and wide jaw with well-developed muscles, a huge body, and arrogant canine teeth that made people feel intimidated at first glance. And in its mouth, those huge molars could easily crush the bones of many wild beasts and even many ferocious beasts. Sometimes they didn't even hunt for their own food, but directly robbed the prey of other predators. Xiaoxian had encountered several situations where wolves were robbed by giant bears. With just a glance, Xiaoxian, who had followed hunting teams for many years in the forest, could judge that this species was at the top of the food chain, at least in this area. At this moment, the bear was anxiously looking for something. It sniffed, stood up, hugged the tree trunk, and licked a fork. Feeling that it was not enough, it easily broke the branch that was as thick as a person's arm with its big palm and put it in its mouth to bite. After a while, it felt bored and threw away the branch that was almost bitten into pieces. It sniffed and continued to follow the smell. At this time, many bears like to look for honey to store enough nutrients for the winter. Xiaoxian just found some honey and used it to lure the bear. He was alone, but there were at least 100 people from the Wan Shi tribe in the forest. This was the old haunt of the Yinjiao tribe. Sometimes, you knew it was dangerous, but you couldn't take a step back. The old haunt was the reverse scale of the Yinjiao tribe. Even if Xiao Xian couldn't stay here all the time, at least for now, he could try his best to stop those people. It would be better if he could teach them a bloody lesson and make them afraid. Fortunately, there were many ferocious beasts in the forest. It was a strange but familiar environment. Looking at the figure flying in the sky, Xiao Xian slid down from the tree and sneaked into the forest. Chapter 195. The first team that arrived at the whistling place didn't go there, because there were many carnivorous birds eating there. Roughly estimated, there were at least 20 birds. The air was filled with the smell of blood. Looking at the fierce appearance of those big birds fighting for food, they knew it was not easy to deal with them. The leader made a gesture to signal everyone to retreat carefully. They thought they had found the people the shaman and the chief talked about, but they didn't expect to see a flock of carnivorous birds. However, they ignored the Wanshur beasts. The Wanshur beasts were the ferocious beasts that were carefully selected. Most of the time, they would bite their enemies even if they couldn't defeat them. They were different from the animals that had been successfully branded and tamed. They were not very obedient, and they didn't cooperate well with the people of the Wanshur tribe. When they were wild, no one could control them. Noticing that there were many carnivorous birds in front of them, the 4 Wanshur beasts that came over all growled. They pulled the straw ropes and wanted to rush over. As soon as the Wanshur beasts roared, the people in the team knew they were in trouble. At this time, they wanted to poke several holes in the Wanshur beasts with their stone knives. But even if they were angry, it didn't help. The carnivorous birds that couldn't get food over there had noticed the people hiding here. They shouted excitedly and rushed to the people hiding behind the bushes. When one of them moved, the others also rushed over, and then more carnivorous birds followed. The leader couldn't help cursing. He didn't care about hiding anymore. Retreat. The plants here were mainly bushes and weeds. Whether it was the bushes or the surrounding weeds, they were all more than 2 meters tall and grew densely. Even if he wanted to guard his feet before, when he was chased by the group of carnivorous birds, he didn't have much energy to pay attention to it when he started to speed up. A man's foot was entangled by something. He fell down and felt a pain in his foot. When he saw clearly what was on his foot, he cut off the vine that entangled his foot. When he started to run again, he slowed down a lot. Soon, he was surrounded by the carnivorous birds that rushed over quickly. Some people brandished their swords at the carnivorous birds, but not only did they fail to chase the birds away, but they also provoked the birds' bloodlust, and they chased and pecked even more fiercely. There was more than one person who had stepped on the traps in the bushes. Here, one would not be tied up and hung from the trees. The simple traps made of vines that were similar in color to the weeds would only cause those who were trying to escape to stumble. The poison on the vines was not fatal, but at this time, it was almost like a death sentence. Some were slapped to the ground by its claws, some were sent flying by its head, and some were killed by its beak. No matter how fierce the 4 Wanshur beasts were, they couldn't withstand the attack of the birds. Seeing the Wanshur beasts break into their territory, the birds were angry. They were as fierce as the Wanshur beasts bred by the Wanshur tribe. For a moment, the sounds of people shouting, birds chirping, and beasts roaring continuously rang out. Ever since the previous squad, this squad had also tasted the tragedy of losing a third of their members in a short period of time. Climb the tree. Find a tall tree and climb up. Out of the weeds, they saw the woods in front of them. Everyone was happy. As long as they climbed up the tall trees, these birds that could not fly would not be able to do anything to them. When a warrior was about to climb up, his hand had already grasped the branch, but a wooden thorn shot out from nowhere and pierced his hand. The numbness and pain in his hand made him lose his grip and fall down. Then he was trampled on the ground by the carnivorous birds that chased after him. There are people around. Be alert. The leader's eyes flashed, and he glanced at the surrounding woods. A man who had climbed up the tree was pierced by a wooden thorn in his leg. He quickly pulled it out and felt a numbness and pain in his leg. Fortunately, he was now in the tree and did not fall down. Just when he was thinking about this, he caught a glimpse of a figure flashing by. Be careful, the leader reminded him. Unfortunately, he was still a step too late. By the time he rushed over, that person had already been stabbed and was no longer breathing. There were already 7 carnivorous birds below. They still had more than 10 people. They did have the advantage in numbers. If they really fought, they might not lose. But now, no one wanted to fight with these birds. Moreover, there were other people hiding around, ready to kill at any time. The leader made a prompt decision. Go from the tree. The trees were not too far apart. With their ability, jumping from tree to tree was still possible. Be careful, there might be. Before the leader could finish his words, he heard a slight buzzing sound, like the sound of a thin thread being flicked. When someone jumped from the tree, he touched a thin thread that was not easy to notice. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Wooden thorns that were half an arm's length shot out from the leaves and grass towards the people who were jumping between the trees. They had to use their swords to block the wooden thorns. If someone was not careful and got stabbed, he would be targeted by the carnivorous birds after falling down. After dodging the wooden thorns with great difficulty, just as he steadied himself on a branch, he was stabbed by someone who quietly approached him. The leader of the group, widened his eyes filled with shock. He saw Xiao Xian's appearance, but he couldn't recognize which tribe the totem patterns on Xiao Xian's body belonged to. But he could see that Xiao Xian was very young. Which tribe are you from? The leader's back was covered with a layer of cold sweat. Such a young and powerful person couldn't be from a small tribe. Just like the leader of the previous team, the leader's first thought was the 8 Limbs tribe. But the totem patterns of the 8 Limbs tribe were not like this. Who on earth was he? While the leader was still in shock, Xiao Xian bent his right knee slightly, and the soles of his feet stomped on the branches. Like a fierce tiger coming down from the mountain, he quickly rushed towards the leader. The stone knife was like lightning in the air, as if it could tear anything apart. Facing Xiao Xian's beast-like eyes, which were full of killing intent, the leader suppressed his shock and raised his arm, holding the sword to block it. Bang! The leader felt a burning pain from his palm, holding the sword, and the force from the sword shook his whole arm, as if it was going to break. And because of the sudden force, in order to stabilize himself, he exerted force under his feet. The branch couldn't bear it and broke with a crack. What a strong force! Which tribe on earth had such great strength, which was not weaker than the Wanshi tribe at all? Moreover, was there only one person hiding around, or were there many people? The leader was more inclined to believe the latter. After all, no matter how strong a person was, the person in front of him was so young, so he shouldn't be able to kill the 20 people of the previous team. If there were many people hiding around, plus the ferocious beasts in the forest that could appear at any time, the more he thought, the more the leader of the second team showed fear in his eyes. No, he had to go back first. After falling to the ground because of the broken branch, he saw the carnivorous birds rushing over again. Ignoring the others who didn't follow him, the leader shouted and turned around to run away. In that direction, the other team should be coming over as well. They just wanted to get away from here as soon as possible. Someone whistled, hoping that the other teams would come to help. After the strike, Xiao Xian didn't continue to chase them. Instead, he jumped into the forest and soon disappeared. The leader and several soldiers who were still alive ran for a while and didn't hear the birds again, so they slowed down a little. But it was too early for them to be relieved. A roar suddenly sounded, and a figure nearly 4 meters high rushed out from behind the forest. The people who thought they had just escaped a disaster felt as if they were thrown into a cold river in winter, chilling them to the bone. Ferocious beasts again. The bear waved its huge paw and gave these people a surprise attack. The soldier closest to it was directly sent flying, spitting out blood as he flew. It followed the delicious honey and came here. It heard the sounds of the big birds and also heard the voices of the people. It always thought that this area was its territory. Those birds were not a big deal, but these people of the Wanshi tribe were completely strange to it, and it regarded them as intruders. Of course, it was angry that its territory was invaded. So, after hearing the noise and smelling the smell, it ambushed here. When the prey came to its door, it rushed out. As one of the ferocious beasts that could play dead and use tricks, The Yinjiao tribesmen were always afraid of the giant bear's lethality. When hunting, they mostly avoided the giant bear's place and only occasionally hunted one. For the people of the Wan Shi tribe who didn't often fight with ferocious beasts, it was a nightmare. After slapping away one person and biting two to death, it was cut several times on its body, which made it even angrier. Whoosh! Whoosh! 3 spears were shot at the bear. It was the third team. The bear dodged 1 spear, but 2 spears were stuck in its body, but it wasn't seriously injured. If it hadn't dodged in time, its vital parts would have been hurt. Roaring, it didn't attack those people. Instead, it turned around and ran away. If it couldn't beat them, it had to run away. 4 Wan Shi beasts were chasing it. While dodging the spears and arrows shot by the warriors of the Wan Shi tribe, it also had to deal with the 4 Wan Shi beasts, so it got more and more injuries. The spears and arrows were poison, but because of its strong resistance to poison, it could resist for a while, but it was hard to say whether it would survive for a long time. "Let's kill it," a warrior of the Wan Shi tribe said. Even if they didn't find the person mentioned by the shaman and the chief, they could bring back a ferocious beast, which could at least reduce the chief's anger. "Kill," the leader of the third team finally said. They didn't dare to provoke the ferocious beast in the forest, but now this ferocious beast was injured and they met it. No matter what happened to the people of the other 2 teams, this ferocious beast must be theirs. "Kill." Seeing that the bear still wanted to run away, the warriors of the Wan Shi tribe hurried to catch up with it. It was rare to meet such an injured ferocious beast, so they had to kill it. More than 20 people rushed over, plus several warriors of the second team who were still alive, all chased after the bear. They thought that they would kill the bear first, and then find the person hiding in the forest. Xiao Xian stood on a tree, using the dense branches to hide his figure, watching those people chasing the bear. He looked at the sky and counted the time in his heart. After a few breaths, Xiao Xian looked in the direction of those people. A roar that was different from the previous bear's roar almost shook the entire forest. The reason why the ferocious beast was called a giant bear was that it was not only 3 or 4 meters long. This was just a baby bear. Generally speaking, such a baby bear was likely to be guarded by a mother bear. Xiao Xian had found a bigger bear paw print in a place before. That kind of giant bear was not only smart, but also vengeful. When it was really angry, it would hysterically chase and kill. Chapter 196. Many people went there, but some didn't follow them. Compared to fighting against the ferocious beasts, they valued their own lives more. Even if they were a little hesitant after hearing the roar, they could guess what happened to the people who went there. Fortunately, they didn't follow them. Taking a deep breath, the people hiding in the bushes rejoiced for their choice. Xiao Xian, who had already sneaked in, jumped down from the branch and chopped down with a stone knife. Another person fell down. Xiao Xian counted in his heart, and the stone knife in his hand cut horizontally to the side, cutting a biting snake into 2 halves. Without looking at the 2 parts of the snake's body and the dead man on the ground, Xiao Xian went to the giant bear. Over there, the bear with many bites on its body and several spears and arrowheads stuck in its body was lying on the ground. It howled at the giant bear that was rushing over, and then bared its teeth and roared at the direction of the people of the Wan Shi tribe, as if it was telling the mother bear that was rushing over, "Mother, they bullied me." The giant bear, who had always thought that it was the king of this forest, was furious, and crazy. Its murderous aura could be felt from far away. The other wild beasts and ferocious beasts in the surrounding forest all avoided it. Even a group of carnivorous birds obediently retreated back to their nest. After tearing a Wan Shi beast, the giant bear's mouth was full of blood. The blood of the Wan Shi beast dyed the 4 arrogant canine teeth red, and the blood dripped down. When it roared, some blood fog came out of its mouth, which was the blood of humans and Wan Shi beasts. When the giant bear was angry, the hunting group of the Yinjiao tribe would absolutely avoid it. The people of the Wan Shi tribe who were targeted by the giant bear were almost killed by its paws. Run in different directions. The leader roared. In the ferocious beast mountain forest, they were most afraid of encountering ferocious beasts. If it were ordinary ferocious beasts, they could try to kill them. But the giant bear in front of them, they didn't dare to fight with it. They could only run for their lives. Those who remained would all be wiped out one by one. Run! At a time like this, they didn't have to run very fast. As long as they were faster than the others, they would be safer. Everyone in the Wan Shur tribe knew this. A warrior of the Wan Shur tribe, who was running in the front, had never felt so lucky about his speed advantage. His strength was not greater than others, but in terms of speed, even the leader might not be faster than him. When this person ran away from the forest and passed by a slightly open area, a figure suddenly flashed across the sky and caught the person who was running quickly. The man felt as if he was being bound by a hard rock, and no matter how hard he struggled, it was useless. Poof! The sharp claws pierced through his body, and before he died, he saw the creature that had grabbed him. Unexpectedly, after dodging the giant bear, he fell into the claws of another ferocious beast. If he had a choice, he would definitely not enter this forest. However, he had no other choice. Those who scattered to escape were harvested by Xiao Xian and Cha Cha. One day later, bang! Stone swords collided with stone swords. Although the swords didn't crack, stone powder burst out from the collision and splashed around. Xiao Xian's perlicue was torn by the impact and vibration of the swords, and blood flowed down along the handle. A figure flashed across the sky. Because of this, the opponent paused a little, guarding against the attack in the air. Xiao Xian didn't pay attention to the wound on his hand. He twisted his ankle, bounced up, and made another powerful chop. When the swords passed through the air, they made a small whistling sound. Feeling the brutal force from the swords, the people in front of Xiao Xian had all kinds of guesses in their hearts. Fast, brutal force, fierce attack, who on earth was this guy? 5 teams, more than 100 people, and nearly 20 Wanshur beasts. Now, how many were left? After the first slash, Xiao Xian continued with the second slash, the third slash, the fourth slash. Slash after slash, he had to disrupt his opponent's movements before he calmed down. At the same time, he had to let Cha-Cha create some trouble in the air from time to time to divert his attention. Only then could he create an opening. Only by seizing that opening could he have a chance to win. Because of the chop, Xiao Xian felt that his arm holding the swords was about to break. Bang! Cha-Cha in the air was also anxious and wanted to rush down. The opponent noticed the movement in the air and paused for a very short time again. Now was the time. Xiao Xian shook his wrist. This time, he didn't chop, but shot out the sword in his hand like a stone arrowhead. The opponent reacted quickly. He quickly stepped back and blocked the tip of the sword with the body of his sword. But when Xiao Xian shot out the stone sword, he took a step forward and the ground under his feet sank instantly. Grabbing the handle of the stone sword that was blocked, Xiao Xian didn't care about the sword coming from the left. He chopped at the opponent as if he wanted to die together with him. Fast. Xiao Xian felt that this chop was faster than any chop he had made before. Even though his hand was lacerated and his arm bones were about to break, he still felt that this chop was the fastest chop he had made since the beginning of the hunt. He could feel that his control of the stone sword was more skillful and precise. Puff! Blood spurted out from the side of the opponent's neck. Xiao Xian moved his body slightly, and his chest was hit by the opponent's horizontal chop. The opponent widened his eyes. He had hit him several times, but why? Why didn't this guy get hurt? Another chop. Xiao Xian looked at the dead man on the ground and shook off the blood on his stone sword. The man on the ground was the leader of the 4th team of the Wanshur tribe. Different from the previous ones, this man was a senior totem warrior. Xiao Xian had to take advantage of the disturbance of the giant bear to launch several sneak attacks to get some results. Although the Wanshur tribe didn't have a good reputation, they were still powerful enough to be called one of the strongest tribes in the central region. Senior totem warriors were much more difficult to deal with than intermediate totem warriors. Xiao Xian's arms and calves were covered with cuts. Only the part from his torso to his knees, his animal skin coat, and trousers had many cuts, but he didn't bleed much. Even the last chop from the opponent didn't make Xiao Xian bleed. Xiao Xian opened a cut on his animal skin coat and looked at the specially sewn leather coat inside. It was made from the skin of the insects he caught when he went to the Eagle Mountain with Cha-Cha. He was the one who had blocked the most dangerous attacks. When Xiao Xian picked up the insect's skin, he didn't expect it to have such an effect. However, although he blocked those cuts and wasn't hurt, he suffered a lot of internal injuries. Some of his ribs were also broken. Quietly looking at the man on the ground, Xiao Xian felt the internal and external injuries caused by the bloody battle in the past 2 days. After this incident, he knew that he still had many shortcomings and couldn't underestimate anyone. If there were 2 more senior totem warriors, the result would be completely different. The smell of blood had spread in the air. Xiao Xian touched the wound on his arm, raised his head to look at the sky, and walked into the woods. Soon, there was not much left. Not long after, he saw the people of the Wan-Shi tribe fleeing in different directions. Holding a knife, Xiao Xian rushed up before they attacked. 1, 2, 3. He hadn't rested for 2 days and 1 night. If it weren't for his strong body, he wouldn't have been able to continue such a bloody battle until now. When the sun began to set over the mountains again, Xiao Xian was covered with blood, holding a knife and walking in the direction of the old haunt. The knife left by the ancestors might be made of superior stone, but after a battle, it was inevitable that there would be many marks on the knife, and there were many nicks of different sizes on the blade. He had to find a good whetstone to polish it again. Xiao Xian thought. In the air, Cha-Cha looked around vigilantly. Although most of those annoying people had been killed, he still had to be careful. Now Xiao Xian didn't have much strength. Looking at the standing stone not far away, Xiao Xian walked over and put his bloody palm on the part of the stone where the moss had been removed, next to the 2 words Yin Jiao. Taking a deep breath, Xiao Xian sighed and took back his hand. He caught a fruit thrown by Cha-Cha and ate it to moisten his dry throat. He simply applied the herbs he found to his wounds, rubbed his aching chest and stomach, and guessed how serious his internal injuries were. Looking around, Xiao Xian walked quickly towards the direction of the fire pit in the center of the old haunt. On the side of the Wan-Shi tribe, the chief stood at the border of the tribe with a gloomy face, looking in the direction of the ferocious beast's mountain forest. Next to him, the shaman of the tribe also stood quietly with a gloomy face. Since yesterday, people came back from the ferocious beast's mountain forest one after another, all wounded and embarrassed. They didn't bring back any useful information. Some said they were scared by the ferocious beasts, and some said they were chased by people hiding in the forest. No matter which one it was, it cast a shadow over the hearts of the people of the Wan-Shi tribe. The joy of winning the war with the other tribes not long ago was gone. In front of them, another person staggered back. The chief signaled several people around to bring him over. How many? The shaman asked. 6. The chief's face became gloomier. More than 100 people, but now only 6 came back. Moreover, there was no chief among them. None of the Wan-Shi beasts came back. Looking at the man who was brought over, the chief of the Wan-Shi tribe strode to him. Seeing the chief's face, the man trembled. He was frightened by what happened in the forest, and now facing the chief's face, he was scared out of his wits. The chief didn't care how the man trembled and asked a few questions. He had asked the same questions to the people who came back before, but no matter the people who came back before or now, they all had the same answer. Who was the other party? Oh, he didn't know. What did the other party look like? Oh, he didn't know either. Was the other party a human or a ferocious beast? Oh, he still didn't know. More than 100 people, but less than 10 came back. Moreover, he didn't even know whether the other party was a human or a beast. When the chief was angry, he didn't say a word, but directly hit. No, this time he directly kicked. He kicked the man who knelt in front of him away. Ignoring the man's life, the chief went back angrily. Chapter 197. The people of the Wan-Shi tribe, because of this test, temporarily gave up the idea of entering the forest. But at the same time, they also took precautions against the ferocious beast forest. Except for the Wan-Shi tribe, they would pay attention to the movements of other people who entered the forest. before they were fully prepared, they wouldn't send anyone there for the time being. This was the result of the discussion between the Wan Shi tribe shaman and the chief. They didn't like to see other forces that were a threat to them in the ferocious beast forest, but at the same time, they had an escape mentality. They felt that as long as there was no greater threat to their tribe, they would put this matter aside for the time being. Perhaps, when everything was more stable, they would send people there again. While the people of the Wan Shi tribe were talking about the ferocious beast forest, Xiao Xian walked to the old haunt with injuries and walked towards the fire pit. However, after 2 steps, Xiao Xian looked in another direction. "Come out yourself, or should I drag you out?" After Xiao Xian's voice fell, a head popped out from behind a collapsed stone house full of moss and other plants. I can come out myself." It was a thin young man who looked a little embarrassed. There were many scratches on his animal skin clothes, some caused by knives, some by branches in the forest. The man looked at the knife in Xiao Xian's hand with fear and forced a smile. "I mean no harm. I also helped you kill 8 people of the Wan Shi tribe." "I only saw 4. Xiao Xian stared at the stranger who appeared. The other party didn't seem to mean any harm. When he killed the people of the Wan Shi tribe, he also saw several people with different wounds. Although he exaggerated, the other party's words were not completely wrong. However, he still had to be vigilant. He was now in a state of exhaustion, and the other party was a stranger he didn't know, so he had to be careful. The man choked. He didn't expect that Xiao Xian, who had been assassinating people of the Wan Shi tribe, would notice how many people he killed. He wanted to say, "There are some you didn't notice," but when he met Xiao Xian's eyes, he trembled and laughed. "Well, I only killed 4. I was forced here by the people of the Wan Shi tribe." Xiao Xian did not say anything. The other party thought for a moment and took 2 steps toward Xiao Xian, but still maintained a distance of about 10 meters. As soon as he moved, Cha-Cha swooped down from the sky and stood on the ground, spreading its wings and staring at the enemy with its eagle eyes. Xiao Xian comforted Cha-Cha. "It's okay." Cha-Cha's appearance startled the man, and he quickly hid behind the collapsed stone house. When Cha-Cha flew up again, he looked at the sky and felt that the eagle in the sky would not come down for the time being. Then he stuck his head out and introduced himself, Rain Tribe, Yang Sui. Xiao Xian stared at him for a long time, until the smile on his face almost froze. Then he slowly said, "Xiao Xian of the Yinjiao tribe." "Yinjiao tribe?" Thinking of the words he saw on the stones in the woods, Yang Sui was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. The Yinjiao tribe should be the big tribe that used to live here, right? But didn't they say that this tribe died out 1,000 years ago? Xiao Xian had been observing the other party's reaction. When he saw the totem patterns on Yang Sui's face, he narrowed his eyes and slightly raised the knife in his hand. Although he was seriously injured, it was not impossible for him to try his best. Besides, the other party's fighting ability was not very strong. No, wait. I'm just looking," Yang Sui hurriedly said. Some very short vertical stripes appeared on Yang Sui's face, which should be the totem patterns of the Rain tribe. On his forehead, there was a pattern that looked like a horizontal eye. The pupil in the eye slowly expanded from a short vertical line to a spindle shape. "No, are you really from the Yinjiao tribe?" Yang Sui was very confused. "There is no fire seed here, and I haven't heard that the Yinjiao tribe still exists." There was no fire seed, and no one had ever heard of the existence of the Flaming Horns tribe. Even the descendants of the people who had been left behind should be wanderers, or they might have accepted the new totem and become members of another tribe. However, Xiao Xian said that he was from the Yinjiao tribe. Xiao Xian was a totem warrior, which Yang Sui was sure of. Because of this, he was confused. The day before yesterday, Yang Sui also felt the energy fluctuation that was very similar to the fire seed. He only felt a little bit that night, and when he came to check, he felt nothing. It was still a ruin. Was it because he was not strong enough? Yang Sui was puzzled. Xiao Xian didn't answer directly, but kept silent for a while. His focus was on the no fire seed mentioned by Yang Sui. Obviously, Yang Sui didn't notice the fire veins under the fire pit. Perhaps this was the reason why the fire veins under the fire pit still existed after thousands of years. Because no one could notice it, they just thought that the fire seed of the Yin-Jiao tribe had been extinguished long ago. Are you a witch? Xiao Xian noticed the power of inheritance in Yang Sui. Yes. How do you know? Are you a witch too? Yang Sui looked at Xiao Xian in surprise. No, I'm not. Xiao Xian didn't say more. He walked to the tall stone pillar, sat down with his back against it, and made a gesture to the sky. Cha-Cha in the sky responded and flew away. When he came back again, he threw something wrapped in leaves. Yang Sui caught the package, untied the straw rope, and removed the leaves, revealing the cold meat inside. It was the meat that had been roasted but not eaten. The meat was roasted by a ferocious beast caught by Cha-Cha. It wasn't a powerful, ferocious beast, but it was better than a wild animal. After eating the meat and drinking some water, Xiao Xian felt better. He could feel the energy brought by the ferocious beast meat. In fact, he could use the fire crystal, which could help him recover some of his strength quickly. But there was a stranger here, and he didn't know him well, so it was better not to take out the fire crystal. After what happened in the market of the Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe, Xiao Xian knew that many people could find the fire crystal in various ways. But at the same time, there were also ways to hide the fire crystal, such as the jade box. The fire crystal in Xiao Xian's hand was now in a jade box. The jade box wasn't a good one, and he had exchanged it with many water moonstones. Fortunately, it had some effect, and that was enough. The jade box, the fire crystal, and some other things were all hidden by Xiao Xian in order to deal with the people of the Wanshi tribe. Seeing Xiao Xian resting with his eyes closed, Yang Sui looked at the darkening sky and moved a few steps toward Xiao Xian. He wasn't too close, but he wasn't too far away either. He knew his own strength. Killing the 4 people of the Wanshi tribe was the best he could do, and it was the result of relying on Xiao Xian's trap. He couldn't do more, not to mention the ferocious beasts in the forest. After seeing Xiao Xian's strength, even though he was still afraid, it was better than encountering ferocious beasts. There were many dangerous, ferocious beasts at night. Cha-Cha was resting on the stone pillar, staring at Yang Sui vigilantly. This was a real ferocious beast, which gave Yang Sui a lot of pressure. He thought it would be hard for him to fall asleep under such pressure, but he didn't expect that after resting for a while with his eyes closed, he would start snoring. In his dream, he saw a vague shadow, like a fire, and in the middle of the fire, there was something like a horn. He had never seen anything like this before. Xiao Xian opened his eyes and looked at the person who was snoring. He was speechless for a while. He thought he was smart, but he didn't expect him to be a fool or a shaman. Carefully sensing the surroundings, Xiao Xian didn't find any threat, so he closed his eyes again and rested. Here, although there was no fire seed, the power of the fire vein under the fire pit could still help Xiao Xian a lot. He could feel the totem flame jumping in his mind. He was very energetic, and the totem power in his body was flowing more and more strongly. The next day, when Xiao Xian woke up, his wounds had healed a lot, and the feeling of exhaustion had been greatly relieved. He also ran to the forest to hunt a small ferocious beast for breakfast. Yang Sui looked at Xiao Xian, who was roasting meat over the fire, and wiped his saliva. He was very surprised. Although Xiao Xian did not bleed much yesterday, Yang Sui knew that Xiao Xian's injury was more serious than it looked. Yang Sui guessed that Xiao Xian would need a few days to recover. Who would have thought that Xiao Xian would wake up in such high spirits and could even go hunting? Was he still a human? Was he really a ferocious beast in human form? No, ferocious beasts didn't have such a strong recovery ability. Just when he was thinking about whether Xiao Xian was a human or a ferocious beast, Yang Sui heard a shout. Hey! Xiao Xian cut off a leg of a ferocious beast and threw it over. Yang Sui hadn't fully recovered yet, but his body was one step ahead of Xiao Xian. He hurriedly caught the leg. He wasn't afraid of the heat, so he took a bite. As for whether Xiao Xian was a human or a ferocious beast, he didn't have time to think about it. Xiao Xian didn't give the fearsome beast leg out of sympathy. With a fearsome beast leg, the atmosphere was less tense. He asked Yang Sui some questions. Yang Sui didn't hide it. The shamans of the Rain tribe would travel around when they were young to broaden their horizons and learn how to become better shamans. Yang Sui was the same. The Rain tribe was not in the central region. It was a little far away. Yang Sui had left the tribe at the beginning of the year. 2 days ago, he arrived at the Wan Shi tribe. Coincidentally, the Wan Shi tribe's team was returning. He saw the women captured by the Wan Shi tribe and planned to help them before they were all taken to the Wan Shi tribe. Unexpectedly, the women he rescued called more people, and he was almost killed by the people of the Wan Shi tribe. Fortunately, he escaped quickly and hid in the ferocious beast mountain forest near the Wan Shi tribe. Only then did the people chasing him return. Xiao Xian understood. No wonder there was a commotion in the Wan Shi tribe that day. It was because of this boy. The people of the Wan Shi tribe were afraid of other people entering their tribe because of this. Did you also steal the meat bird of the Lu tribe? Xiao Xian asked. No, absolutely not. Yang Sui retorted with a righteous face. After a pause, he said without confidence, when I passed by there, I found a meat bird in the forest, so I took it away. That meat bird was so easy to trick. If you put a fruit in front of it with a branch, it would keep running. Yang Sui was tired at that time, so he used the meat bird as a tool to run errands. However, the route he took was different from the route of the Lu tribe's team, so Xiao Xian didn't meet him. Until he passed by the Wan Shi tribe. He saw the commotion caused by Yang Sui. Chapter 198. Since leaving the Rain tribe, Yang Sui had spent most of his time with some traveling teams. He had developed the habit of chatting with others when he was free. Just like now, when Xiao Xian asked him, he couldn't stop talking. Yang Sui told Xiao Xian about the places he had been to, the people he had met, and the tribes he had visited after leaving the tribe. These were not secrets, and he wanted to show off. In many tribes, most people wouldn't have the chance to walk around like this, nor would they have the courage to do so. However, Yang Sui had not only done it, but also lived until now. In fact, I'm not the real shaman of our tribe. Why go back this time? I'll be able to take over. Yang Sui said proudly. Isn't your tribe afraid that you'll have an accident? Xiao Xian asked. There's nothing we can do about it. This is the rules set by our ancestors. If I die, there will be another person who will continue on this path until someone succeeds. Only then will he be qualified to take over the position of shaman, Yang Sui said. Thinking of something, Xiao Xian asked, if the shaman leaves the tribe and has an accident, will there be a next shaman? Of course there will be. Yang Sui was surprised that Xiao Xian didn't even know this. However, he glanced at the knife in Xiao Xian's hand. For the sake of Xiao Xian's animal leg, he said, as long as there's a fire seed, we can make another one. It's just a little troublesome to cultivate. Every tribe has a different way of selecting shamans. As for the chief, it's even simpler. Whoever is more capable will be the chief, according to the rules of the tribe. In other words, as long as there's a fire seed, everything will be fine. If there's no fire seed, everything will be gone. That's right. That's why I'm confused. Where's the fire seed in Yanjiao? It's not here. Oh, seeing that Xiao Xian didn't want to say more, Yang Sui didn't ask anymore. When it came to the secrets of the tribe, no one would say more. After thinking about Yang Sui's words, Xiao Xian thought of the way the Yanjiao tribe shamans were passed down and sighed. TSK, the incomplete fire seed of the Yanjiao tribe was not fully functional. Instead of talking about the fire seed, Yang Sui talked about the Yanjiao tribe that had been annihilated nearly 1,000 years ago. The Lu tribe was also an old tribe with a long history in the central region. They were able to establish themselves in the central region not only because of their talent in breeding, but also because of the ancestors of the Lu tribe. The ancestors of the Lu tribe? Xiao Xian didn't expect to be able to trace back to that time. I heard it from others. Yang Sui had been traveling around for a year, so he knew a lot of things. It is said that nearly 1,000 years ago, the ancestors of the Lu tribe helped several large tribes in the central region when the world changed. At that time, there was a shortage of food, so many people had their eyes on the Lu tribe. However, The ancestors of the Lu tribe were also very powerful. Not only did they provide food for the other large tribes, they also taught them some better breeding techniques. Although many people learned how to breed, they still couldn't breed as good as the people of the Lu tribe. However, at least the crisis was alleviated. At that time, the ancestors of the several tribes made a win-win agreement, so the Lu tribe was protected. Until now, the several tribes have been in close contact with each other. Just like what Yang Sui said, there were many simple techniques. Even if other people tried to do the same, the result would not be as good as the Lu tribes. In the areas where there were many human tribes, most of the food came from farming and breeding. Many tribes in the central region had large areas for farming and breeding, and the scale was even larger than what the ancestors of the Yinjiao tribe had recorded. There was no doubt that in the past 1,000 years, breeding and farming had developed greatly. It seemed that he would go to the Lu tribe to learn more if he had the chance. Xiao Xian thought. After staying in the old haunt for 2 more days, Xiao Xian decided to leave. Winter was coming, and the temperature had dropped significantly. He had to find someone. "Where are you going?" Yang Sui asked. "The Longboat tribe." "Oh, what a coincidence." "Me too. I'm going back to the Rain tribe. It's not a long way to go." Yang Sui didn't know how long it would take to find a traveling team on the same route after leaving the ferocious Beast Mountain Forest. Even if he found one, he wasn't sure whether that team was safe or not. In Yang Sui's opinion, Xiao Xian was a strong man. Besides, he had a hawk with him. It would be safer than going alone. If he went alone, what if he met people of the Wan Shi tribe? He would be killed. Xiao Xian didn't refuse Yang Sui's offer. He didn't know much about this area, and he had been here longer than Yang Sui. But from what Yang Sui had said, he could see that Yang Sui knew the situation in the central region well. It was good to have him show the way. Xiao Xian could also improve the map in his hand. After getting Xiao Xian's permission, Yang Sui was very happy and excited. He looked at the cha-cha flying in the sky and couldn't wait to jump up. He didn't know if it was comfortable on the hawk's back. When he went back, he could show off to others that he had sat on a hawk before. But Yang Sui looked at the sky. "It's going to rain today until the evening. Let's wait for a while and find a place to hide. We can set off tomorrow. The next few days will be mostly sunny." Xiao Xian looked at the sky. The clouds didn't change much, but he still nodded. Not far from the old fire pit, there was a concave place on the mountain. Although it was not as spacious as a cave, it was enough to shelter them from the rain. When they were sheltering from the rain, Xiao Xian asked Yang Sui, "Can you observe the sky?" The weather changed very fast. The common sense of his previous life was only partly applicable, so Xiao Xian couldn't see the weather accurately. Sometimes the clouds change very fast, so it was hard to make a conclusion in advance. "Observing the sky?" "Kind of," Yang Sui said. "The reason why I was chosen first and became the candidate of the first wizard was because I was the first one to pray for rain." Speaking of praying for rain, Yang Sui's tone was a little guilty. A long time ago, the shamans of the Rain tribe could pray for rain at any time. Even in the dry season, they could make the sky rain. Later, this ability disappeared. It was said that the first shaman who couldn't pray for rain was burned to death in the tribe. It was said that he had angered the gods, so his totem couldn't appear and rain couldn't come. But later, the second, the third, and even several generations of shamans failed to pray for rain. People panicked at the beginning, then became numb. They tried all kinds of methods, but nothing worked. So there was a rule that the candidates for the position of shaman must travel outside, hoping to find a solution. However, many years had passed, and no shaman of the Rain tribe could do it. This rule had been continued until now. So when Yang Sui prayed for rain, many people in the tribe were shocked. But in fact, Yang Sui could only see the sky and react according to the sky. But he was misunderstood by the tribesmen that he could pray for rain. Yang Sui wanted to explain, but after seeing the reaction of the tribesmen and the crazy eyes of the chief, he stopped. He felt that if he explained, he might be tied to the fire pit and burned to death by the chief. Alas, Yang Sui couldn't help but sigh. At the thought of praying for rain, Yang Sui felt as if his body was burned by fire. He hoped that the tribe could withstand it. Not in every tribe, shamans had an absolute status. If a shaman had the strength and could fool people, he would naturally have a high status. But if he didn't have the strength and didn't know how to fool people, he would be burned to death or something else in a tribe like the Rain tribe. Yang Sui didn't say much about the Rain tribe, so Xiao Xian could only speculate based on a few words. But praying for rain? Could it really be done? It seems so magical. As Yang Sui said, after it began to rain, it didn't stop until night. The next day, the weather was sunny again. Yang Guang shone on the earth, dispelling some of the chill of late autumn. When we arrive at the Longboat tribe, it will probably snow, right? Yang Sui said. Because praying for rain brought too much pressure, Yang Sui paid attention to the climate and weather changes every time he arrived at a place. He inquired about the climate of the previous years and made inferences according to what he knew. He couldn't judge the specific situation until he arrived there. Now it was just speculation. After packing up, Xiao Xian gestured to Cha-Cha to come down. Looking at Cha-Cha, Yang Sui was excited. After Xiao Xian jumped up, he also climbed up. However, after Xiao Xian jumped on the eagle's back, Cha-Cha took off. Yang Sui, who was about to climb up, was stunned. Cha-Cha flew in the air and flew down again, stretching out its claws to catch Yang Sui. When he saw the eagle's claws, Yang Sui's first thought was to turn around and run away. He also ran away, but the eagle's speed was still faster than him. Before he could run 2 steps, he was caught. When Yang Sui was hiding in the woods, he saw Cha-Cha kill people of the Wan Shi tribe with its claws. At this time, he also thought of the bloody scene. He could only close his eyes, feeling that his life was in danger. But soon, he felt something was wrong. The eagle's claws were not as strong as he thought, and they didn't hurt him. When he opened his eyes, Yang Sui saw the ground flying away quickly. For the first time in his life, he was taken to such a high altitude. Early in the morning, a scream sounded over the forest, startling a group of birds that got up early to look for food. After screaming for a while, Yang Sui calmed down. He saw the Wan Shi tribe below. Cha-Cha deliberately flew over the Wan Shi tribe, shitting all the way, and then turned around, flying in the direction that Xiao Xian pointed out. The Longboat tribe was also in the central region, but not very close to the central region. The tribe's habitat was next to a wide river. Of course, the widest river in the central region was far less than the one in front of the Yinjiao tribe's mountain, which was just like the sea. When he was traveling with the Pu tribe's traveling team, Xiao Xian heard from the people in the team that the Pu tribe's traveling team had also passed by the Longboat tribe, but because of some reasons, they changed their route. Xiao Xian's understanding of the Longboat tribe came from the travelers. The Longboat tribe was good at building ships. It was said that the Longboat tribe built the first ship in the central region, and later it developed into a fleet, which was also the characteristic of the Longboat tribe. When there was no metal, how could the big ships mentioned by the travelers be made practical and sturdy? Xiao Xian was very curious about this. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.